Hey guys. This is part 12 of What If Naruto Faked His Death. Hit like and subscribe if you like this one, and also please check the author in the description. Let's start. Chapter 47, A New Shinobi Village. A lot can happen over the course of only 3 months, far more than even Naruto had expected. After they liberated the southern capital, the blonde allowed any who would rather not stand with them, or risk their safety, to leave the village, even going so far as giving them a percentage of the funds the village had on hand to start a new life somewhere else. Those of the empire left in chains and a cart pulled by a few oxen that would not be missed in the building of their new sustainable village. On that note, the plains outside the large city, once barren and empty, now were filled with farms growing vegetables, as well areas for animals, all to feed the new uprising. Further out, away from the imposing city, large training areas had been constructed, and even now each were filled with new recruits that had signed up to fight for their lives and freedom from the empire. Along with the recruits, several of Naruto's clones were at each of these fields attempting to teach as best he could. While the physical side of things was rather easy to explain, it had been hard for him to properly explain the theory behind the use of jutsu and chakra. This was mostly because he was never very bright, at least as far as the area of academics was concerned. Luckily, Karen was on hand and more than happy to help take over whenever those lessons came up. Refugees were almost a constant for the fledgling nation, arriving at the gates to the city in hopes of starting a new life outside of the empire's control. And after an in-depth inspection to make sure there were no spies from the empire, were allowed entrance and given a new home along with enough food to last several weeks until they found a job or signed up to aid in the construction of the new rebellion, either as a trainee shinobi or in other non-combat roles. Naruto sighed as his clones began to dispel, signaling the end of the training for the day. He allowed a small smile to grace his features at the memory of improvements they had made, as some are getting good, probably near mid-genin level. Well, they won't last long in a full-scale battle out in the open, but they could at least be used to throw kunai and shuriken when the village is attacked, Kurama replied, his lazy drawl showing his indifference. The large fox could really care less about the strength of the others, but he could see how they would be useful in the future. Naruto sighed in agreement, folding his arms behind his head as he walked through the village, granting a friendly nod or smile to any who would greet him. Yeah, you're right. Either way you look at it, we need more time. I even cut out the boring lectures Iruka-sensei used to give and focused on the practical areas, but there is only so much you can do in a few months. Still, the advanced class is getting there, he replied in thought as his destination came into view. His goal was at the northern side of the village. The giant towers gave way and more homely-looking buildings took their place. Toward the middle of this sector was a large fortified compound that was comprised of a large stone mansion with walls almost as thick as those that had surrounded the village. The building served many purposes, but for now all Naruto cared about was that this was his home. He eyes a broken training post that had been installed for teams from the empire that had been sent to the city in the past. Looks like Karen-chan has been busy today as well. I hope she's not too tired. We have a meeting later. Bachan will get mad if we're late or not paying attention. Yo, Karen-chan, you in? The blonde called as he pushed open the door into what was a large foyer. He sighed when the answer didn't come straight away. This place is way too large for us. I was happy in our little home back in the small riverside village, he added before Karen made her presence known. Naruto-kun, you're back. She cheered happily, bounding down a flight of stairs before giving him a quick hug. She was wearing a lavender loose-fitting t-shirt and some black shorts that cut off high up her thigh, showing off her long legs. Her hair seemed to be growing longer now, reaching the small of her back. Regardless of length, however, it still continued to be completely uncontrollable on one side. How was your training? She asked once she allowed the embrace to end. Naruto rubbed the back of his head in mild embarrassment. Not bad, but I'm having trouble with some of the elements. I don't care what Fukusuka-sama says. Trying to master all the remaining elements at the same time is too hard. It was difficult to admit that he was failing, especially when he knew that the beautiful redhead seemed to think that he could do anything. They did test that you had the elements right? She asked, feeling sorry for the blonde. Naruto nodded in affirmative. Yeah, I have all 5, just like Fukusuka-sama guessed. I don't know where they got the chakra paper from though. I do hope they're not stealing from Konoha though, he said, his thoughts drifting to his old home almost longingly. Then I know you can do it, Naruto-kun. Don't give up. Karen smiled lovingly as she spoke. Naruto smirked in response. Don't you know, I never give up, and I never surrender. That's my nindo after all. Just even with a bunch of my clones working on different elements, it just all gets jumbled up and I can't focus on anything. The worst is definitely Raiton. Either Fukusuka-sama or Shima-sama have that element. And I don't know who to ask for help, he admitted, but feeling significantly better. Well, I don't even know my element, so I can't really be of much help. But why don't you just pick one element to train when you're not with the toads? I mean, it will mean less time together, but if it's important, maybe you should. Karen admitted sadly. It was not something that she could help with. Yeah, I've thought about it. But with everything that has been going on lately, we have barely had any time to ourselves, Naruto replied. Karen grinned happily as a new thought occurred. Well, let's fix both then. All I need to do is find out my element, and we can train together. Alright, but we need to find some more chakra paper. Maybe we should ask Bachan. I shouldn't ask the toads again. They have been in hiding on Myobokuzen since I faked my death, and it's a risk if they leave. Naruto beamed enthusiastically. She's in the office going over some requests for renovations to the city, the female Uzumaki replied, finding her boyfriend's enthusiasm to be contagious. Then what are we waiting for? If anyone knows how to test your affinity, it will be her. He cheered, grabbing Karen's hand and taking off in a light jog. They ran up several flights of stairs till they came to the top floor, a confined dome with large glass windows allowing clear lines of sight in every direction and only comprising 2 rooms, a large office and a small separate waiting area. Hey Bachan! He called happily before opening the door into the main office. What do you want, Gaki? I'm working, she said with a half-hearted scowl before she even came into view of the young couple. Naruto was hit with a wave of nostalgia. Tsunade sat behind her desk, a stack of papers in one hand and a saucer full of sake in the other. Man, this brings me back. It's just like your Hokage again, he beamed. Tsunade didn't share the younger blonde's enthusiasm, however, and allowed her scowl to deepen, sending the blonde a glare that he completely ignored. It's not by choice, that's for sure, but someone has to take care of running this city, and unfortunately you're too valuable to be kept behind a desk for most of the day, she said bitterly, downing her saucer of sake before pouring another. Now get to the point, we don't have all day. Naruto rubbed the back of his neck sheepishly. Sorry Bachan, we need some help with Karen-chan's training, he admitted. I thought you had left her training up to the Snow Leopard clan, the Godame inquired, quirking an eyebrow. Well, yeah, I have, because she's not suited to my taijutsu style and most of my ninjutsu are either too chakra heavy or require sage mode, and it's impossible for her to learn the toad-style ninjutsu that Fukusuka-sama has been teaching me anyway, Naruto admitted somewhat sadly. He had thought of teaching Karen the Rasengan and Shadow Clone but had so far decided against it, mostly because he didn't have the required balloons or rubber balls needed for her to complete the first 2 stages of the Rasengan training. Get to the point, Gaki. What do you need? Tsunade spat, with fake anger. Right, I need to find some chakra paper to test Karen-chan's affinity. The toads got some for me, but it doesn't feel right asking for someone else. Besides, I think they may have stolen it from Konoha, the younger blonde admitted, his hand running through his spiky locks. That's not an easy request, Naruto, Tsunade admitted honestly. I think I can get some though. I'll need to send Katsuyu to Konoha soon to deliver a message to Kakashi, as well as pick up some more supplies. Naruto grinned, knowing when Tsunade said supplies she meant alcohol. I'll get a few books of chakra paper. Those students of yours will need them eventually as well. Naruto beamed happily. Thanks Bachan, I really owe you one. Yes, thank you Tsunade-sama, Karen added, her own contented smile still in place. Don't mention it, Karen-chan. Just make sure you keep this idiot out of my hair for the rest of the day, the former Hokage said with a soft smile. Elsewhere, Gahara was knelt before a large 4-poster bed. While the bed was dimly lit, the room itself was dark, almost pitch black. The curtains around the bed were pulled tight so only a shadow of the occupant could be seen. You sent for me, Aji-sama, she said. Her voice was strained from frustration of being called to the capital of the empire, and having to remind herself who it was she was speaking to. It seems time has not improved your attitude, Haim, the figure spoke, his voice gravely cracking from age. It should be quite obvious why I called you here, is it not? Oh yes, the albino Uchiha knew all too well why she had been brought before the emperor. He may be a bedridden, decrepit old man, but he still kept a watchful eye over his empire. I believe you are referring to the small upstart that has taken control over a part of the southernmost kingdom, she answered, her voice flat, devoid of all emotion as she schooled her features. It seems you are not as incompetent as I gave you credit for, dear girl, the old shadow taunted. The question is, what are you going to do about this boy who humiliated us? He roared, his voice portraying that of the man who won his spot as the overlord of the empire. How should I proceed, Aji-sama? My forces were crippled when he struck the placement trials, even taking all the surviving recruits. The portion of the army I control is currently weaker than all the other governors, she queried, already steeling herself for the inevitable. She was not to be disappointed as a second later the old man rose in his position on his bed. You still control 5,000 men, you stupid woman. When you took over for your husband I allowed it. He was a weak and pathetic man to allow himself to be killed by the likes of you. But even he would have dealt with a single boy and a handful of traitors by now. Even if she had been expecting an outburst, her control over her emotions was beginning to slip. 5,000 men will not be enough, she declared both loudly and honestly. You think me weak, old man, but every time you have tried to get rid of me I pulled through. Her features turned to a pronounced scowl. You had that seal placed on me to prevent me from using wind. I broke free. I overpowered it. You had my parents sell me to that foul cretin I was forced to call husband. So I killed him. I enjoyed it. And when you finally die I will enjoy that too. She huffed, a glare firmly leveled toward the shadowy figure. A long pause followed the shocking declaration but was suddenly broken by the old man laughing. Look at that defiance in your eyes. It's such a shame you are so weak. Otherwise you would have made a fine wife for the crown prince. He scoffed derisively. His humor suddenly disappeared and a massive spectral hand of Susanoo curled around the princess's form, exerting enough force for her bones to begin to strain in protest. You have till the end of the year. You will get no more men, no more time. Kill the boy and bring me his head or die, those are your options. Do you understand? His Susanoo squeezed slightly tighter when she didn't answer, immediately causing her to scream out in pain that almost came out as a moan. Yes, Aji-sama. Satisfied, the emperor released the albino, tossing her against the far wall like a rag doll. Good. Now get out of my sight, you sicken me, he spoke, deadly serious. For her part, Gahara didn't make a sound as she rose to her feet, crossed the room and exited via two large double doors. While the previous room had been almost black apart from the illuminated bed, this room was well lit. Filled with gold ornaments along the walls were pictures of the emperor in better days, looking strikingly close to that of his father Madara, who had a statue in gold at the end of the hall next to the exit. Opening the door at the end of the hall, she was standing on a large balcony atop a tower that rose so you could see for miles in every direction. The balcony sat overlooking an endless expanse of towers that were significantly shorter, all cloaked in the seal of the Empire and Uchiha clan. Gahara let out a frustrated sigh and moved to begin descending the side of the tower when a new presence made itself known. Now what did you do to piss off Toussaint this time, Go-chan? Izami-sama. Gahara sighed, wanting nothing more than to leave, but knowing that if this man wanted something then there was nothing she could do. Izami was a tall man with spiky black hair that he kept at shoulder length. He wore a white causal kimono that allowed for easy movement that was tied by a black and red cord that also held a katana loosely at his hip. His feet were covered by combat sandals. What's the matter, Go-chan? Are you not happy to see me? He asked in mock hurt. That's not it at all, Izami-sama. I have just been given a rather undesirable task by Aji-sama. Gahara spoke bitterly. Undesirable. But my dear Haim, you are given the chance to serve the Empire. Should you not relish that opportunity? He teased. The albino princess had heard these words before. Every time when she was given a task she would hate. The first time was when she was 13 and given to this man's youngest brother as his bride. Her inability to perform a single katan jutsu was seen as an affront to the Empire despite her prodigious talent in combat and futon jutsu. As punishment for her perceived crime, Izami, the man before her, placed a sealed collar on her neck that prevented the use of futon jutsu and offered her up as a prize to breed a more fitting Uchiha, all just for the chance to serve the Empire. Her thoughts on the matter were rather clear as she was unable to prevent the scowl that crossed her face. Izami seemed to be more amused than threatened, however. You shouldn't scowl, little Go-chan. You're still a young and beautiful woman. I'm sure you will make a more worthy Uchiha a fine wife. Though we must be sure to pick one that can control you better this time. He smirked, knowing the proud woman would have to bite her tongue and keep her calm lest risk losing her pretty head. Is there something you want, Izami-sama? She questioned the wind around her, unconsciously picking up ready to act in either offense or defense if necessary. Yes, I just wish to offer my condolences on the death of your daughter. I hear it was quite the powerful jutsu that took her out. It's a shame. She would have made a great commander in the future, he said casually, leaning on the railing of the balcony completely carefree. She was a foolish girl that didn't know when to run from a superior opponent, Gahara replied emotionlessly. Jolie and Gahara had never gotten on. Jolie hated her mother for killing her father, and Gahara saw her as a reminder of all of her humiliations at the hands of the man she had been forced to marry. Superior, you say? Izami chuckled in good humor. I didn't realize our little upstart was an Uchiha. Don't be foolish, he's no Uchiha but undeniably powerful. Gahara replied, a tiny hint of awe and longing etching into her voice. Then it is you who are the foolish one, cousin. We are Uchiha, we have no superiors, we are born to rule. Izami scoffed. Your own son seems to think otherwise, Gahara replied, a little pleased knowing that the mention of Shugo's desertion would get under his skin. Izami knew what she was trying to do, however, and didn't give her the satisfaction. I have no son, he is nothing but a dead man walking, but do bring me his head when you cut it off. That is your job after all. With his piece said, the man turned and seemed to fade away before Gahara's eyes. This is why I hate the capital, she spat, her wind snapping the railing she was holding before she turned to leave. That night, underneath the large palace that now served as Naruto's home was a complex of tunnels that connected the building to others around the large compound. Each path connected directly under the palace, where there was a large meeting chamber well outside of any potential spy. Currently Naruto and several others were seated at a large table that contained a rather detailed three-dimensional map of the empire. We currently control this area here in the south, Shugo informed the group at large, despite knowing that they already knew at least that much. However, over the last week refugees have begun arriving from the east seeking to join our rebellion. Well, that's good, right? That means people know about us, right? Naruto replied happily. Shugo nodded in affirmative, but Tsunade could see from the map where there might be an issue. The Empire will not want us increasing in number. They will move to shut safe routes of travel should the numbers of refugees increase substantially, she spoke calmly. You are correct, Tsunade. The major roads could be sealed any day now. But that shouldn't be an issue as long as we can keep open at least one trail, Shugo replied, pointing to a small mountain pass that was a few days' journey to the west. This would be our best bet. My spies are spreading word of our uprising in the other sectors, and if we can land a few more victories against the Empire, we could see our numbers grow, even from within their military. And you propose this to be where we strike? Tsunade queried. She knew their fledgling shinobi were not ready to take on such a serious task, and the 20 Jounin and Chunin-class ninja that had joined them were not enough to fight a war. But that wasn't our plan. We said we would only retaliate to an aggression, not bring it to the Empire, Naruto argued, not liking where this conversation was going. You're right, Naruto. I am simply pointing out strategic areas that will be weakly defended, once the Empire makes their move. We must have a plan of action before the enemy moves. Shugo explained. But it's been 3 months and we haven't seen or heard from the Empire since the trials. Maybe I scared them off and they'll just leave us alone? Naruto asked hopefully. That's foolish, Naruto-kun, Karen lectured. Shugo makes a point. If we think of this like a game of shogi, we are currently just setting up the board. They have the first move, but we can anticipate it and plan our counter. Very astute of you, Karen-chan. Perhaps we should have made you the face of this rebellion. I'm sure you would inspire the men more than Naruto here. Shugo chuckled. Hey! I'm plenty inspiring, Naruto pouted. Sure you are, Gaki, Tsunade replied with a smirk. Naruto sighed and went to mop in the corner, ignored by the other occupants of the room. The only resistance you will find on this path will come from 2 areas, Shugo explained, bringing attention back to the map. The town of Kanamid here, he said, indicating a small mountain village. They will number about 20, they'll be stocked poorly, and won't have any highly skilled troops stationed there. Up here, however, there is a garrison of about 50. You can expect 1 commander. So how would we proceed? Tsunade queried, willing to use Shugo's knowledge of the Empire's military workings and landmarks to their advantage. Kanamid is mostly a civilian village. It should be liberated in a similar manner to the way we took control of this one. The garrison, however, should be destroyed, at least once we appropriate all necessary gear. Garrisons like this are easily reinforced, and leaving them to stand while we do not have the numbers to man them would be dangerous, Shugo suggested. We would also need to act at the same time. If we attack the village first, they could call for backup from the garrison, and attacking the garrison could mean reinforcements in the village. Tsunade reasoned while observing the proposed battleground. So we split up, half go to the garrison while the others take over the village. Naruto said casually. I don't think that's a good idea, Tsunade replied, drawing the blonde's attention to key landmarks on the map. The garrison sits atop a plateau. Too many, or those unskilled in stealth, will give the attack away. This should be a small force, no more than a single squad. Naruto sighed in agreement. The assessment made perfect sense and made the blonde Uzumaki realize just how much he needed to work on planning out proper strategy rather than coming up with plan in the spur of the moment. He had never had any experience leading missions that would help him gain these skills, so he found himself quietly wishing Shikamaru was there with them. It should be no problem for you to take out the garrison by yourself when the time comes, Naruto. Maybe take Karen with you for backup. Shugo suggested calmly. I guess, what do you think, Karen-chan? Naruto asked. Karen nodded, if not a little hesitantly. She was not worried about the attack, or that Naruto might be injured. It was the other offensive that had her pause for a moment. What about the other attack? She queried. I will take charge of our main forces to take the town. My men would be more than capable ourselves, but I would suggest supplementing our numbers with some of the more promising trainees. They will need the experience, and my men will be there in case things get out of hand, the Uchiha exile suggested. I like that idea, but this whole plan is based on movements suggesting an attack in the next few weeks. If we have more time, we could hit more areas, or perhaps a larger target, Tsunade said, folding her arms and examining the map, looking over where small fortresses and military outposts had been marked out as points of interest. That's true. I would need more time to come up with a plan of attack. I would suggest a secondary attack, this time to the west. But I would need more intel from my spies before I could pick out a definite weak point. Shugo admitted. Tsunade nodded in understanding, leaning back in her chair and pouring a saucer of sake before taking a sip. Well, it looks like for now we have a game plan at least. Naruto, how are the recruits coming along? Well, it's hard to say. The advanced class, I guess, could probably be considered mid-gen in level, but I never really had a good grasp on that stuff. They're at least better than I was when I graduated, although thinking back that's not saying much, Naruto admitted sheepishly. Perhaps my men can help grade them? Shugo mused. The Empire was rather picky when it came to talented students, so all those in the academy were given a rank from Ite for potential. Every so often they get one wrong though. Tetsu was given AC rank because he struggled to use his clan's bloodline. That was before he discovered his mutation. It can't hurt. Tsunade answered. Can you organize your men to go assess the students over the next few days? She asked, earning a quick nod from the Uchiha. Good. Now that's all done, I think we have spent enough time in this stuffy room. Unless we get word of an attack, we will meet up again next week. The declaration was followed by cheers from the younger blonde, who quickly grabbed Karen and dragged her from the room. Well, he can claim he's not a pervert all he wants, but I would have to disagree, wouldn't you, Jiraiya? I swear if you're watching them up there, I'll make you pay, she thought with a smirk as she caught Naruto give Karen's rear a light squeeze as they left the room. Her giggling and chasing after him told her all she needed to know of what they had planned for the remainder of the evening. Chapter 48. Training Days. Tetsu stood stiffly outside Gahara's palace. She had only just returned from the capital a few hours ago, and judging from the sound of things, then he would say her time there didn't go particularly well. She had instantly kicked everyone out of the large mansion, including himself. She had been visibly angry and started by stating that, should she be disturbed by anyone, they would be punished. Since then her frustrated yells would echo out over the grounds, accentuated by glass blowing out from the force of her wind manipulation at various intervals, as she stalked through her mansion. Several servants scurried about, desperate to both stay out of the princess's way but also clean any mess that she may have caused in her aggressive outburst. Last thing they needed was to have the temperamental Uchiha princess's rage directed at them for any reason. Tetsu for the most part had spent the last few weeks training new recruits. With the disaster that was the last placement trials, all new recruits that had survived the trials had been assigned to Gahara. They had lost a decent portion of their men when they attempted to trap Naruto. For his part, he could honestly say that there were some genuinely talented new recruits this year, even if there were no exceptional standouts. Of course, this year's Uchiha recruits took his teachings with a grain of salt. They'd had private tutors since they could walk and had already survived their family's coming-of-age ceremony. Most thought him to be nothing but a nuisance. Tetsu was broken from his musings when the doors to the palace burst open, shattered into pieces no larger than kindling, and out walked the albino princess. What unsettled the blood wielder more than anything was the almost serene calm that she exuded, considering the amount of damage she had clearly caused inside just a few moments earlier. Now that's better. Nothing gets the stink of the capital off me better than a little redecoration, she said with a smile. Tetsu bowed slightly, not wanting to risk her seemingly improved mood. It's good to see you're feeling better, Haim-sama. For her part, Gahara just allowed her smile to grow. Yes, I can barely stand the cesspit that most of my family calls home. I prefer a more hands-on approach to ruling over my region of the empire, she said somewhat kindly, although Tetsu could see the rage still burning in her eyes. You are certainly devoted, the rust-haired man declared calmly. He knew that he needed to ask about what her orders from the capital were, but decided to wait until she brought the topic up. She didn't seem to mind or even notice the dry compliment, instead deciding to change topics. Tell me, Tetsu, and give me your honest opinion. How powerful would you say Naruto-kun is? Gahara asked. Tetsu paused. He had been asked that question once before and had been horribly wrong. Back then he thought the young blonde would be nothing more than a minor nuisance. Well, Haim-sama, I would say he could probably compete with any of the current governors, he answered eventually. Yes, I already knew that much. He's already thrown me around, like I was a foolish little girl. I'm asking how many of us governors would you say they would need to kill him? She asked sweetly, the kind of sweet that sent Tetsu's iron blood running cold. Surely if you took him seriously from the start, then no more than two, Haim-sama. He answered, trying to placate whatever had angered the unstable princess. This, however, was not the right answer. The ground in front of him was torn up, and he could feel the wind blades digging into his skin. Do not flatter me, or presume I did not try and defeat Naruto-kun in our previous engagement. A specimen like that cannot be defeated by just a handful of even the most skilled of our number. Forgive me, Gahara-Haim, I haven't fought him firsthand like you have. Tetsu begged, hoping for her to relent in her blades of wind that were currently slicing him open. But I must question, why do you ask? I thought you said that you wouldn't be killing the boy. Yes, but Aji-sama in his almighty wisdom has ordered that I solve the problem of the little rebellion in the south. We currently have a little over 5,000 men. Do you think that will be sufficient numbers to crush them? The albino Uchiha asked as if she already knew the answer. Tetsu opened his mouth to say yes, they had only a handful of men to defend a giant city after all. But then he stopped himself. He remembered the giant toads casually turning a battalion into dust in mere moments. Then, he remembered the overwhelmingly oppressive feeling of the giant golden fox he later summoned, and then that final jutsu. I would say that it would be very difficult, Haim-sama. We would need quality rather than quantity, he admitted, now wondering just how they should proceed. Quite right, Tetsu-chan, you seem to be learning just who it is that the Empire is facing. In fact, considering he couldn't be more than 20, I doubt he even realizes just how much power he holds. Oh, to be able to leave nothing but ashes of an opponent, it's invigorating. Gahara replied quite happily. She was almost giddy in excitement. Needless to say, Tetsu didn't share the albino's enthusiasm. In fact, he was quite worried. Then how do we proceed, Haim-sama? We do not have the required manpower to defeat them in a battle, and we're short on high-ranking officers. Yes, it is an issue, isn't it? It's as if we have been ordered to our deaths, Gahara mused conversationally. Tetsu took her light-hearted approach as a positive and relaxed slightly. You have a plan then? Oh my, no, but orders, are they not? We have until the end of the year, so I would suggest training the men as best as you can until then, Gahara replied, almost dismissing the accusation. Why you want me to train our men for a fight that you don't even believe they can win? Tetsu stammered. If things played out as she expected, then she was effectively throwing away her chance for the throne. All her ambitions crushed in an instant. Gahara smiled and simply nodded in affirmative. Yes, best give them a fighting chance, don't you think? Oh, I wonder what else we will see from Naruto-kun. He was so tantalizingly destructive last time we met. I can still hear the screams of his victims. Oh, I hope he remembers me. She swooned like a giddy schoolgirl. Somehow I don't doubt that he will, Tetsu thought with a deadpan. Gahara's enthusiasm was seemingly not fading, as she seemed to be playing out some fantasies in her mind that the blood-release shinobi was sure consisted of mass slaughter. Oh yes, this should be perfect. I do hope you tell the peons to train well, Tetsu-chan. I wouldn't want things to be too easy for him though, can't let his head get too big. Forgive me, but if you were to fail to defeat Naruto, then would you not lose the southern region of the empire? The others from your family would take over the region. Tetsu was genuinely concerned. Even with several months to prepare, Gahara seemed determined to see them fight a battle with little to no chance of victory. The princess began laughing as if she was completely dismissing her subordinate's concerns. Yes, I'm sure they will, but I know my family. They will squabble over who gets the land, then when they can't agree they will turn on each other. Meanwhile, all I will have to do is wait. I'll let my precious Naruto-kun deal with the ones who don't fall to the infighting. She reveled in the thought of watching some of her closest family members being crushed either by themselves or the young blonde. That will destroy the empire. If what you think will happen plays out, it could end in both a civil war, and could even be the end of your own family. Why would you want such a thing? Tetsu asked, feeling like his world was starting to collapse around him. Gahara seemed completely unaffected by the question and began walking down the path towards the end of the compound, issuing for Tetsu to follow behind. My family won't end. We will simply get rid of the deadwood, just as we always have. As long as an Uchiha rules the empire, then it doesn't matter how they got there. Madara-sama took the empire from the ruling kingdoms, destroying all those who would oppose him. But he also allowed others to do his work for him. Do you think your family would have lived had they not proved useful? For his part, Tetsu was just as confused as ever. I don't understand, Haim-sama, he admitted honestly. But isn't it obvious, Tetsu-chan? I will simply take Naruto-kun as my own. If he joins me, then he joins the empire. It will no longer be a rebellion, and I can use his silly desire to change things to remove my family one by one until I become empress of this world, she declared, biting her lip in anticipation. Tetsu dared not speak his thoughts on her plan. After all, they mostly rested on the shoulders of a boy almost half her age. That wasn't to say the albino princess wasn't beautiful. She had often been described as a goddess, even if it was by those terrified of her. Still, the question had to be asked. What if he doesn't accept your proposal? A cold chill went down the young man's spine. The Uchiha looked as if she was about ready to remove his head from his shoulders at any second. Do you not consider me to be desirable? Do you think he would turn down even thought of my advances? Even if he is hesitant, he just needs to be educated, she purred with venomous innuendo. How she looks isn't the problem. If she wasn't certifiably insane, I would say he's the luckiest man alive. But now I think even I pity you, Naruto. Elsewhere, you two should really keep this room clean, Tsunade said with a disapproving tone and a slight smirk, guessing the reaction she was about to get as she looked around the top-floor apartment of the small palace they now called a home. Tsunade-sama? Karen gasped from where she lay. Quickly sitting up, poking her head out from behind a couch, her face quickly turned as red as her currently completely disheveled hair in embarrassment. Yes, me. You both are quite late for training, so I came to get you. Didn't sleep well last night, I take it. The slug Sanine smirked as she picked up and inspected a rather risque piece of lingerie that had been discarded carelessly over a chair. In fact, all around her were pieces of clothing that had looked like they were torn off rather than removed. The table was on its side and several of the dining chairs were mysteriously missing. She guessed they had been thrown away in a fit of what they would call passion. If I didn't know better, I'd say you were fighting in here, she mused, her attention now drawn to a ceiling fan that slowly turned overhead where one of Karen's bra now hung proudly on one of the dull blades. Sorry, Tsunade-sama, we lost track of time, Karen admitted quickly, desperately wishing she could find an article of clothing within arm's reach to at least make her decent. I'm sure you did, Tsunade scoffed. Naruto was many things, but purposefully late for training had never been one of them. At least not in the time she had known the highly energetic blonde Uzumaki. Seems like you're teaching him some bad habits. Well, I wouldn't call them bad, Karen admitted with a mumble, her face somehow becoming ever redder at the slightly perverted thought. It was then the pair was brought out of their little conversation by the door opening from a bathroom, and the blonde in question strolled out lazily. Karen-chan, why is it so noisy out here? He asked through half-lidded eyes and dressed only in a towel. It was at that moment that he noticed the third party that was in the room. Oh, Kami-ba-chan, we had the silencing seals on. No sound could have gotten in or out of the apartment, he stammered, frantically racing around, comically grabbing the discarded articles of clothing as if the former Hokage hadn't already seen them. I'm aware, why do you think I had to break in? Swanda said with a deadpan, slightly torn between the frustration and humor of the situation. What you two lovebirds do in your own time is fine with me. But you were both supposed to be training the recruits almost an hour ago, and don't lie to me and say you forgot. For their part, both looked slightly ashamed of themselves. Sorry, Bachan, we were just… No, I don't want to hear it. Tsunade quickly interrupted the blonde. I'm not Jiraiya, so I don't need to know the details, just hurry up and get dressed. At the moment Shugo and his men are teaching the classes, but that just means we have nobody watching the walls and gates, well, other than your pet Tanuki. Shikaku isn't a pet, Bachan, he's a friend, Naruto whined, not understanding why she didn't seem to trust the Ichibi. Save it and get dressed already, Tsunade ordered with a harsh glare. The young couple both nodded and quickly made an escape to the bedroom, which Tsunade marveled at the fact that it looked spotless. Damn kids didn't even make it to the bed. Ah, to be young and in love, she thought with a soft smile and a chuckle, her fake anger being replaced by the joy of seeing her surrogate little brother genuinely happy, rather than the fake smile he had so often worn as a child. A few minutes later, Naruto and Karen had returned fully dressed. Karen was still dressed in a black short-sleeved top she had purchased all those months ago before leaving the Elemental Nations, a pair of tight shorts that cut off only a short ways down her thigh, knee-high stockings and black combat boots. Overall, her choice in outfit had not changed a great deal. Naruto, on the other hand, was looking more along the lines of an well-laundered homeless person. He had a loose-fitting button-up green shirt that he left open over the top of some light chainmail armor he had liberated from one of the old gangs that ran the city. He wore black jeans that, whilst designed for civilians, were more durable than most, the signs of scuffs and fading color evident from his training. Finally, to round up his ensemble, he too had black combat boots that were the only article of clothing left unchanged since before the war. Good lord, if you had a kabuki robe and an oversized hataite, I'd almost be staring at a young Jiraiya, Tsunade said in a deadpan, not sure if she should be impressed or horrified by the blonde's choice of clothing. Naruto for the most part was fine with being compared to his former master, as long as it was as a shinobi. But he could tell that Tsunade had certainly not meant for it to be taken as a compliment. Well, I can't help it, we don't have any decent combat gear in the city yet. The blacksmiths are only creating kunai, shuriken and a few tanto. It will be a while before I can get some armored clothing. So until then this is the best I can do. Well, I suppose for now it will have to do, until we can change it. But if you start doing pointless and ridiculous introduction dances I'll have to punish you, the elder blonde threatened seriously. She won't be the only one, Naruto, Kurama added threateningly. Naruto's face fell. He had almost thought of doing one just to prank his beloved Bachan, but he really didn't want to face both an angry slug Sannin and Bijou. Not you too, Kurama, just shut up and go train your students. There's no need to bring any more of her ridicule. Really, you and your mate are two of the best censors in the world, and you just keep letting her walk in on your intimate moments. Kurama scoffed derisively. I haven't let her do anything, she just keeps barging in, Naruto replied in his defense. That is not the point, Naruto. What if it had been an assassin rather than that loud, angry woman? The fox said in a matter-of-fact tone. Naruto sighed in acceptance. He knew Kurama had a point. Alright, fair enough. I'll try to be more aware in the future. A few moments later Naruto and Karen were off heading across the village. Karen was heading to a large hall that they had set up as a beginner's level academy for children to learn about how to use chakra and chakra theory. Once they were proficient there they were given the option to move on to combat training that was taken care of by either Naruto, his clones, or on the odd occasion like this morning Shugo and his fellow exiles. Naruto created several clones to relieve the force substitutes while he moved on towards where the advanced class had been currently training with Shugo. Yo! He called happily, signaling his arrival. Oh Naruto, good to see you finally join us, Shugo said happily, relaxing as he had been running the recruits through several conditioning drills along with the tree walking exercise. Whilst Shugo may have been happy, others were not. You're late! Came the annoyed yell from Rei. Naruto was instantly hit by a wave of nostalgia. Despite being older he could almost see Sakura standing with the exact same pose, her hands on her hips as she spat the same accusation at their own sensei. The blonde couldn't help himself, it just had to be said. Ah, sorry, I guess I got lost on the road of life. Suddenly the entire clearing was dead silent, not even the insects seemed to dare make a single noise, as if the whole world was silenced in disbelief. The silence stretched on for a few more seconds until, that has to be the worst excuse I have ever heard. Rei yelled loudly, followed soon after by a chorus of agreement from the other students. Naruto chuckled at their indignation but had to admit it was a lot more amusing being on this side of the joke. Also, having thought of his old sensei, he was struck with another moment of inspiration. Alright, now I'm guessing you're all warmed up. No thanks to you, Rei scoffed, her glare still directed squarely at the seemingly carefree blonde. Naruto seemed to just ignore her and formed a clone that instantly ran off towards the village. Today we're going to have a little survival exercise, he said happily, talking to the group as a whole. What, you're not going to help us work on our taijutsu or ninjutsu? A young man a few years older than Naruto asked, a little disappointed. No, not today. I was thinking that I should teach you one of the first things I learned from my own sensei. I just hope my clone can find what I need in town. But first, I want you all to split up into groups of 3. The blonde explained before moving over to a group of trees and slicing them with wind manipulation into several training posts. With great commotion the group began dividing themselves. Naruto watched as a class hierarchy seemed to appear, with many wanting certain members of the class to join them for various reasons. However, eventually they had separated into 4 teams of 3 in time for his clone to return and hand over a pair of bells and some rope. His students looked at the rope apprehensively and the bells with mild confusion, but before any could question why Naruto cut them off. Each team will go one at a time and have 1 hour to take one of these bells. If you fail to get a bell, you will spend the next week with Karen-chan learning the basics of chakra control with the academy students again. This revelation did not sit well with the group of advanced students. Wait, if each person needs a bell, why are there only 2 of them? Rei asked apprehensively. Glad you asked, Naruto said with a smile. That is because 1 person from each of your groups will definitely be going back to spend time with Karen-chan, he added, still as carefree as ever. The outburst was as expected. Nobody seemed happy about the prospect of sitting through lectures and having to practice basic chakra control exercises. I let them pick their own teams so it should be easy for them to work together. Besides, it's not like another week learning the basics would kill them anyway. We didn't even make them learn how to use the most basic jutsu before they could move on to proper combat training like in Konoha. Although if there was no leeway I would probably still be in the academy unable to perform a standard clone. Eventually, after the initial shock had worn off, the groups decided amongst themselves who would go first, not an appealing task from Naruto's point of view. He would rather go last in hopes his opponent would be weaker, and he could see how they fought. However, that was the current Naruto thinking, not the brash straight out of the academy genin Naruto. Alright, 1 hour to get one of these bells off me. I would suggest coming at me with the intent to kill, otherwise you will have no chance, Naruto said lazily, not even taking up a stance. In another wave of nostalgia, it appeared as though one member of the first group was more eager than the others. He flew forward at admittedly impressive speed for someone with little more than a few months' training. Naruto casually leaned out of the way before grabbing the offending attacker. I don't believe I said start yet, but I do like your enthusiasm. Now let's begin. He taunted before disappearing in a puff of smoke. Do you think any of them will get the true purpose of this test? Kurama asked while Naruto, now well hidden in a tree, watched as the first group of students searched for him. Hard to say, it's not an easy test to pass. Even today I think Kakashi-sensei let us off a little easy. Our teamwork was horrible, Naruto admitted. True, but at least nobody here is as bad as the screaming pink one, Kurama mused while Naruto began allowing more of his presence to be felt, giving the recruits a chance to find him. Sakura-chan wasn't that bad, Naruto replied in defense of his old friend. Kurama couldn't help but scoff at the thought. Naruto, I know you are fond of that woman, but when you were young kids she was more likely to hit you than agree to one of your plans. Even that deplorable Uchiha was willing to listen, and even try if he thought the idea could actually work. Naruto couldn't even deny that. He wouldn't be surprised if he still had a lump on his head from where she used to hit him all the time. Okay, you have a point, but she got better, even if it really was only so she could see Sasuke again, he added, and to his shock he even sounded a little bitter at the thought. To shake the sudden feeling of resentment, he decided to stop playing hide and seek with his students, instead going for another favorite pastime of his sensei, divide and conquer. Hi! He called happily, dropping in front of the same young man who had recklessly attacked him at the start. You ready to hand over one of those bells, Naruto-sensei? He asked. The man in question was slightly shorter than Naruto, but was well developed, having lived a hard life out in the outer regions of the empire. Like most of the students currently in the advanced class, he had been at the placement trial, so he'd seen just what the blonde could do. The problem was, with learning how to control chakra for himself, he had gotten a little bit of an ego. Naruto didn't even take a stance as he effortlessly weaved through the telegraph taijutsu strikes sent for him. Not bad, he admitted casually before planting a fist into his stomach. But you're too slow to attack an opponent with superior technique. To win a fight in taijutsu you can either use superior technique or physical ability, Naruto lectured while taking a seat on a large stone while his student was struggling to slowly pick himself up from the ground. He spoke loud enough for everyone to hear as it was a hint to the true purpose of the test. But you're so much faster than we are and have far more experience. How the hell are we supposed to win? The man asked almost desperately. Seems like he really didn't want to go spend time in Karen's class. That is the question you need to answer for yourself, Naruto replied casually before he disappeared in a puff of smoke once he was sure the man would not be getting back up in any condition to keep fighting. One by one the others failed to do anything more than make the blonde dodge. The second group was slightly better, but they too failed to realize what it was Naruto was looking for. The final group at least had time to form a plan, even if they didn't work together. Ray had set up traps throughout the field. Naruto could recognize them as traps they had used while hunting animals in the small riverside village. While they were not perfect, they had clearly taken knowledge and planning to put together. Damn it, I thought I had him that time. Ray yelled in frustration as Naruto had purposefully walked into one of the traps only to quickly replace himself out of harm's with a log that was then impaled with a hail of kunai and wire before a tree was brought down atop of it. Well, at least she's taking the intent to kill part seriously, Naruto thought with a sweat drop. Yes, the last group was significantly more skilled individually, but even at this level if they didn't stand a chance against the blonde. A buzzer rang signaling that they had run out of time. Well, looks like everyone failed, he said loudly, casually walking towards where the other teams had been tied up and forced to watch the proceedings. But at least that last group didn't get beaten up too badly. You went easy on them, because Tenji and Ray are from your old village, one aspiring kunoichi accused. Her anger was shared by many of those that were also tied up. Naruto contemplated that he may have gone easier on the last squad, but in the end it didn't really matter. Even if I did, they showed me more than any of you, and they still failed miserably. He lectured as the final members of the class made their way into the clearing. Not one of them attempted to fight me head-on. They learned from you all that wouldn't work. They also correctly guessed I wouldn't go out of my way to hunt them down for a fight. What's the point? You can't get one of the bells if you don't fight for them. Hell, nobody even touched them. The brash man from the first group spoke in defiance. Naruto nodded with a smile and went to sit under the shade of a tree nearby before continuing his lesson. That is a good point. But not a single team used everything you could have to achieve a victory. The last group at least had plans to trap me. Ray even forced me to use a substitution. But in the end they failed to see the big picture. And what is that? Ray asked, a little bitter at having failed in her task. You were all so concerned with having to spend 1 week learning the basics you allowed everyone else to fail just so you would have a shot yourself. Every single one of you failed. The fact there were 2 bells means nothing, it's just a symbol. In the face of a superior opponent that has greater skill and physical ability, you can't possibly win by yourself, but you will think first of self-preservation. How you act in these situations is important. Naruto explained, enjoying the stunned look of realization that hit some of their faces. It was a lesson in teamwork. Tenji sighed, looking a little disappointed in himself. He had known from the start that he stood no chance against Naruto, instead opted to attack the blonde from a distance, aiming to remove the bells with a projectile and grab them when he was distracted. That's right, how are you supposed to trust your squad to fight alongside you, even sacrifice themselves if necessary, if they aren't even willing to risk sitting in on a few boring lectures for you? In the end, you all not only failed the mission, you abandoned your friends as well. My sensei told me that those who abandon a mission are trash, but those who abandon their friends are worse than trash. The blonde explained passionately. For their part, the students seemed to understand what Naruto was trying to say. Many seemed to take what he had to say to heart, having lost family members or friends to bandits and the so-called tax collectors in the past. When can we come back for more training, Naruto-sensei? Ray asked sadly. She was slightly cursing herself for not seeing the true purpose of the test. I mean, he was able to defeat 2 members of the royal family. What chance did I ever have? Naruto waited a few moments before smiling. Come back tomorrow afternoon, after you have finished your first missions as squads 1 to 3. I'll give you a new chakra control exercise, so long as I can find a large enough body of water. What? The group chorused in disbelief. You guys are ready for more responsibility and to gain some experience, so the team that went first will now become Squad 1 and your new squad leader will be Ray. Team 2 will be under Tenji and the third team will be under the final member of their team today, Ryusuke, Naruto explained happily. So we're officially ninja now? A younger boy asked. He was about 13 and reminded Naruto slightly of Kiba, although he lacked the Inuzuka clan markings on his face along with the Nikan they always had at their side. Naruto grinned happily at the newly constructed teams. That's right, but things will get a lot harder from here on out. From tomorrow on you will be expected to take on missions that will help the people of our new country. It won't be easy. In fact, things will be dangerous for you most of the time, so listen to your new squad leaders and keep up your training. Now go celebrate, you've earned it. The teams cheered and ran off, loudly proclaiming their success to the world. Once they were gone, Naruto turned to where he knew Shugo was watching from a nearby tree. You reward them for failing? He asked with a smirk. More like pass them out of necessity, Naruto admitted with a sigh. I want to teach them to be shinobi who will work together as comrades and would die for their friends. I want to get that message across, but I think we're running out of time. They're not bad though. I was following their movements as they fought. While none would be considered officer material yet, they have only been training for a few months, Shugo said, somewhat impressed with the first batch of graduates. They lived in harsh conditions, that's as good as training. Ray was a hunter from a young age. They just needed to learn how to use chakra. The skill was already there, Naruto replied. Shugo could see the logic in the statement. They didn't need lessons in hiding, tracking, because they already had that from hunting wildlife, and living under the conditions of the Empire made them tough, durable, and strong. Then I almost pity the Empire. Chapter 49, Coming of Age. Man, what a total disappointment, Tenji sighed sadly. The freshly minted shinobi was sat in a bar with Ray and several of the other new members of the rebellion. I don't know what you were expecting, Tenji. Did you think we would be charging head-on into the Empire or something? Ray asked, her expression as cold as ever. Well, no, but didn't Naruto say something about bandits targeting the outlying villages? I thought we would be at least dealing with that, not settling stupid trade disputes in the city or carrying construction materials across town, Tenji retorted, his head hung over a large stein filled with beer. I'm sure we will get those missions soon. It has only been a few weeks. Our teams are still learning to trust each other. The final new squad leader, Ryusuke, reasoned. Ryusuke was a slightly shorter than average man in his mid-20s. He had short light brown hair that spiked backwards, leaving his unmarked face clear. His eyes were a bright shade of emerald green, and he wore baggy dark red robes with wall collar and arms that allowed for a free range of movement. I for one am in no hurry to go out. We are far below the level of Naruto. Even Karen or those deserters would be able to deal with all of us with little difficulty, Rei started. She firmly believed that they all needed more training before taking on any higher difficulty missions. Well, Naruto-sama is on a different level to everyone. I believe we need experience to help us reach higher levels. Each time we spar with Naruto-sama we learn new ways of fighting, but he is only one man and so far out of our league we might never stand a chance. I fear we need a more realistic opponent, Ryusuke reasoned, taking a sip from a saucer of sake. So you think we should ask Karen-chan for training then? Tenji queried. He didn't think it was a bad idea, but Karen really only taught the new recruits until they could access their chakra at will and could hit enough targets with kunai and shuriken. She never gave anyone first-hand private lessons. We could ask Tsunade-sama? Who knows, if she misses a punch we might get to find out just how large her chest really is, he added with a perverted snigger. Pervert, Rei scoffed. She was interested in talking to the Sannin. However, both Naruto and Karen had both mentioned that they believed that the older blonde was one of the strongest women alive. Still, Tsunade is supposed to be scary powerful. She's also supposedly a great medic. I wouldn't mind learning how to heal. It would be a useful skill to have on the battlefield. Ideally we should all learn, Ryusuke added calmly. Not to burst your bubble or anything, but Naruto did say you needed almost flawless chakra control. Naruto can't do it, but Karen-chan can. No way, everyone can learn. Besides, Tsunade is currently running the nation at the moment, even if it is little more than a handful of villages. She might have time for a spar, but I doubt that she will have enough time to teach us, Tenji reasoned. Personally, he just didn't think he was cut out to be a medic, but he could see the sense in learning some basic first aid. Rei sighed and folded her arms in light frustration. Again, maybe Karen is a better choice. She was the one to look after Naruto whenever he came back from the forest looking like he'd lost the fight with a tree. I'm sure she knows more than basic chakra exercises. I guess it's a start. Who knows, if we impress her enough Tsunade might take interest. Ryusuke agreed. Question is, where do we find her? I can't remember seeing her around the city unless accompanied by Naruto, and the only other time she's teaching the new recruits. Each day after our training, Naruto and Karen both train in their compound. That would be a good place to check first. After that I'm not too sure. They each have important duties around the city. But to be honest, I'm not sure what Karen does. Rei answered. Probably just follows Naruto around. They may as well be permanently glued at the hip, Tenji joked, taking a final swig from his mug before standing. When he noticed the others had yet to move, he began to pull Ryusuke to his feet. Come on, we don't have all day. If we're going to ask her for training we may as well do it now. No time like the present, as they say. Ugh, why must you be so upbeat all the time? The other male member of the three asked. Because if I wasn't we would have to put up with your gloomy attitude, and that would scare everyone away. It's bad enough we have the Ice Queen over here threatening everyone that tries to talk to her, Tenji retorted quickly. I do not. Rei denied, earning a deadpan look from both men. Not all of them. Again the look didn't change. Whatever, let's just go find Karen. Meanwhile, Naruto stood with Fukusaku and Shima. He was in sage mode, effortlessly running through a set of hand seals, toad style, fighting tongue slash. An instant later a highly compressed torrent of water erupted from the blonde's mouth that tore through the ground a split a fair distance through a large boulder that was in the large training ground. Much better, Naruto-chan. A few more days and you will be able to slice through the stone with ease. Fukusaku praised. He could be faster with the hand seals though, Shima pointed out from her perch in a tree. Naruto sighed and nodded in both agreement and understanding. He had always been rather clumsy with hand seals. That was partly why the Rasengan and its variants suited him so well. I know I have clones that practice nothing but hand seals almost every day, but I don't seem to get that much faster, he admitted sadly. Shima saw his slight distress and softened her expression. It is not a major issue, Naruto-chan. I simply pointed it out as your weakest area while performing that jutsu. You are currently working on so many things that to have such a small weakness as the main issue with a S-ranked jutsu is nothing short of a miracle. Naruto smiled happily at the compliment. Thanks, Shima-sama. But Suiton is the element that I am furthest along with by far. I think it's because it's so similar to Futon. I can barely do anything with Doton, and I haven't even completed the first step of right-on manipulation yet. Kakashi-sensei would know what I am doing wrong with it. He's the best right-on user there is, except for maybe Reiki Jajuzan. It is understandable that right-on and Doton are more difficult for you to grasp, they act in different ways to Futon. Doton is rigid and tough, the complete opposite to wind, while Raiton has a less stable structure that needs to be able to fluctuate and change while also remaining focused and contained. Fukusaku agreed in sympathetic understanding. While earth and lightning manipulation were points of frustration for the blonde, his progress with fire and water were considerably better, helped by the fact they were the elements of his two-toed teachers. That's enough with the ninjutsu training, we should move on to taijutsu, Shima declared, hopping down from the tree to stand beside her husband. Naruto let out a breath and slid into his toad-style stance that was soon mirrored by the two toads. Then in the blink of an eye both toads disappeared in a blur, appearing at opposite angles around the blonde. Fukusaku rose high and aimed a wicked kick at their young summoner's temple while Shima went to sweep the leg in a perfectly coordinated attack. Naruto blocked Fukusaku's attack while hopping over Shima, diving forward on instinct to avoid their follow-up unison drop kick. Rolling up, Naruto spun quickly. His sage-enhanced senses allowed him to feel their movements and aim a kick for the falling Fukusaku, who effortlessly blocked the strike with his tongue, wrapping it around the blonde's ankle and tossing him away. Naruto was able to readjust in mid-air and come to a safe landing, skidding across the ground but otherwise unharmed. I swear they're both getting faster, he thought before jumping high into the air as Shima long tongue whipped once more at his legs. They continued in this vein for almost an hour. Each strike was countered perfectly, each feint perfectly read by the other. It was as if both sides were able to read their opponent's mind, and as things continued the attacks became more and more destructive, as if they were still getting a feel for each other, testing their limits. Despite the apparent danger, Naruto had a large grin plastered across his face. Each time he dodged a strike that would be fatal to many he laughed. Each strike the small toads avoided he simply grinned wider and up his tempo. To any outsider watching it would look as though the blonde and his summons were in a vicious fight to the death that they were all enjoying, rather than a simple spar. Enough! Shima called out suddenly after another large area of the training field had been destroyed by one of Naruto's senjutsu-enhanced punches, that while not as destructive as Tsunade or Sakura could still leave a small crater in their wake. That time already? Naruto asked, looking a little disappointed. And then some. You have greatly improved, Naruto-chan. To be able to fight both of us at the same time to a standstill, that is something Jiraiya-chan never managed to do, Fukusaku said sagely. I still need Sage Mode to stand a chance though, Naruto sighed, as he allowed the foreign chakra to leave his system, reverting to his natural state. You say that like it is a failure. We are many hundreds of years old, Naruto, not as ancient as the old geezer, but our affinity for nature and the sage arts places us in the top tier of summons. To be able to stand up to us at all requires a special talent. Shima replied with a hint of pride in the latest toad sage. Naruto rubbed the back of his neck in embarrassment. Thanks, Shimo-basama. Well, we can't have our sage being weak, that just won't do, Fukusaku croaked approvingly. Yeah, don't worry, Fukusaku-sensei. I'll become the strongest there, as if that's what I need to do to keep everyone safe, the blonde declared proudly. Fukusaku was about to respond but was stopped as three people arrived in the clearing. Yo, Naruto! Tenji called out with a wave. Naruto waved back with a friendly smile and went to greet the trio. Hey guys, why are you here? He queried. Actually, we were looking for Karen, Ray answered before the older man could. Karen, huh? What? You guys looking for more remedial lessons on chakra control? The blonde teased. Not exactly, Ray replied, not showing any signs of a reaction. We were actually hoping she could spar with us, and maybe show us some medical ninjutsu. I can spar with you guys if you're looking for a training partner, Naruto said happily. He never turned down a chance to spar. No offense, Naruto, but we were hoping to test ourselves against someone who we might actually stand a chance of at least getting a hit on. Tenji sighed, rubbing the back of his head in mild embarrassment. He didn't want to admit he was weak, but in all their spars not once had they even forced Naruto to even use more than the most basic of jutsu, never once breaking his clone. Naruto sighed, knowing that feeling all too well from his initial training sessions with Kakashi. Well, I doubt you will win. Karen is tough. But she fights differently to me, so it might be a good idea. She's been training with Bachan in the afternoons, so she might help you with some medical ninjutsu. I'm useless in that area. We initially thought to ask Tsunade. We assumed she would be busy. Ray spoke in slight surprise. Well, she is, but they train for a few hours a day. Who knows, you might be able to join them. Naruto answered calmly. Now relaxed, he decided that he would end his own training there and help his students. It can't hurt to ask. Come on, I'll take you to where they train. The three nodded but didn't have time to respond any further, as they had to take off in order to follow the blonde, who had already started moving out of the training field. Karen and Tsunade were on the other side of the large mansion compound. Karen was currently hunched over catching her breath before launching herself out of the way of a large ball that left a small dent in the ground. You can't be tired already. You need to be faster and more flexible. What the hell did you learn from Orochimaru? Tsunade lectured before throwing another projectile at incredible pace at the tired redhead. Karen pirouetted out of the way and sighed in relief. Mostly how to dissect his experiments and take records, she said in a dry, almost emotionless tone, hoping that the guilt trip would cause the next object to be slightly slower. No such luck as it turned out. Then we have to make up for lost time. If you want to be a medic for that idiot who just loves to throw himself into dangerous situations, you need to make sure nothing can ever hit you. The Slug Princess declared as the pace started to increase. Training with the Slug Sannin was brutal. Being the world's best medic allowed her to essentially take Karen to breaking point, and then heal her back up just to break her again. She only pulled her punches enough to assure that no permanent damage would be done. Oh, how Karen wished she had the blonde Sannin's super strength, so she could simply swat the harmful projectiles away with ease. Or the speed of Naruto when he was using his bijou cloak. Not being blessed with these gifts meant it was only a matter of time before one of the balls hit home, and when they did, they hurt. Tsunade began picking up the pace, not letting Karen have a rest. Faster and faster, more projectiles were sent at the frantically contorting younger Kunoichi. One wrong move would mean game over and she would lose. Tsunade was starting to get mildly impressed with her progress when something seemed to catch the redhead's attention, and she was struck right in the chest. Karen-chan! Naruto yelled, bursting into the clearing and straight over to the currently downed young woman. Well, that explains the distraction. Tsunade sighed, hands on her hips, as she approached the pair with the blonde frantically fretting over his lover. Out of the way, Naruto, she's fine. She's unconscious, how is that fine? Naruto yelled back. She's conscious, she just doesn't want you to know it, Tsunade replied with a scoff. In response, Karen groaned. See, she was just enjoying seeing you fret over her like some loyal dog. Hey! Naruto whined, not liking the comparison. She should also be embarrassed for letting herself get so easily distracted, just because you and a few students showed up, Tsunade replied, still disinterested in the situation but acknowledging the other new arrivals who hadn't made their appearance known yet. Her hands began to glow green as she ran them over the area that Karen had been hit. I wasn't expecting him to show up, that's all, Karen replied, wincing lightly as she started to sit up. That's no excuse. A field medic cannot afford to get hit, even if it's in training. Medics are the first target of any competent military. They also have a reputation as being non-combatant and weaker than those who fight on the front lines, so they will be targeted for that reason as well. But I will not have that from any of my students, the Godame Hokage declared. Besides, if I don't make you strong, you won't be able to keep this idiot in line and he'll just run off again, she added, motioning towards Naruto. Naruto pouted indignantly at the light-hearted insult. Hey, I'm not gonna run off again. Besides, we don't need any more people with your freakish gorilla strength. Wasn't Sakura bad enough? What was that, Gaki? Swanda said threateningly. You heard me, you old bat, the younger blonde spat back. The two bickered back and forth as they so often did, throwing insults at one another with no real venom till their foreheads touched, and eventually broke out into a round of laughter. I don't get it, are they friends? They act more like enemies, Ryusuke asked in a hushed whisper to Tenji. More like family. Apart from Karen-chan, she would be his most precious person, Tenji answered. Meanwhile, the two blondes had finished their bout of laughter. Relax, Gaki. Karen isn't suited to using my strength techniques. She would be better off suited to poisons and projectiles like Shizen. Plus, despite having decent control, she has more chakra than Sakura has, or even I had at her age. That will make it extremely hard for her to learn. She should learn some support long-range ninjutsu once we can test her affinity. This did please Naruto, not because he didn't want her to learn to use Tsunade's strength, but because it meant that Karen would not be on the front lines as a taijutsu-type fighter. We both could do with learning a few. Most of my jutsu now, other than the shadow clones and Rasengan, were taught by Fukusaku and Shima, and I can't pass those on to anyone who hasn't signed the Toad contract. Not to mention most are instant kill techniques, Tsunade added with a deadpan. Not all, like 70% tops, Naruto replied seemingly without a care. He loved a powerful jutsu, the stronger the better. As long as you're not in sage mode or using your bijou cloak, that is, Tsunade corrected. Anyway, I doubt that will be much of a problem for long. The real question is, why are you and your students here? Naruto wanted to question why she didn't think finding them juts would be a problem, but decided that he could ask that later. They want training in medical ninjutsu. They also wanted to ask Karen-chan for a spar. We really just want to know the basics, Ray spoke up, not wanting to sound like they were being demanding. Just enough to get started so we can help our squads if they need it. Actually, I think everyone should learn at least the basics. Enough for first aid at least, Karen said, agreeing with their reasoning. We don't want to impose Tsunade-sama. In fact, we were going to ask Karen-sensei to teach us, Ryusuke added with a respectful bow. Good idea, all the students should learn, and teaching others will also help you learn yourself if you teach them, Karen, Tsunade agreed. She had always wanted to add proper first aid to the academy in Konoha after she had properly established the field medic program. She would have liked a medic in every squad, and they were slowly making progress toward that goal before the war, and hoped that Shizen and Sakura would continue that process. Alright, I accept, but I don't think I can accept your spar today, I'm too sore. We will have to do it tomorrow. Then we can talk about a time to start basic medic training. Karen agreed. Actually, you may want to give it 2 days, Tsunade said suddenly. Why is that? I don't feel any worse than I have at the end of any of our other training sessions, Karen asked. Because tomorrow is the 10th of October, the elder Kunoichi replied. What, really? Naruto asked in complete shock. He had lost track of time months ago, when he was crossing the mountain, and never really cared to correct himself. What, don't tell me that you didn't know that tomorrow was your birthday? The slug Sannin queried. Naruto rubbed the back of his neck in embarrassment. No, I totally forgot, so I guess that makes me 18 then, huh? He said in mild shock. That's right. If you were in Konoha, you would be getting bombarded with marriage interview requests, Tsunade teased, enjoying the fact that both Naruto and Karen were growing red in the face. Naruto in embarrassment, Karen in anger. You would probably also be offered a place in the Shinobi Council as representative for the Uzumaki clan. Kami, I had no idea that turning 18 would be such a big deal, the younger blonde said, trying to get over Tsunade's teasing. Tsunade smirked and shook her head. As I have told you before, it's a coming of age even for shinobi. You're seen as a man, and with that comes more responsibilities. For example, in Konoha you need to be at least 18 to take on a squad of genin, and you need to have taken on a genin squad to be considered for the position of Hokage. Sounds like you still had a long way to go if you were going to become Hokage, Naruto-kun. I mean, you were only a genin, Karen giggled. Naruto hung his head, nodding sadly in embarrassment. I never got to retake the Chunin exams, it's not my fault. Well, you could have been given a private test of skill. For a higher rank, you didn't need to take the Chunin exams, Tsunade said in a matter-of-fact tone. What? Naruto gasped. Why didn't you ever tell me? He asked, now slightly depressed. I would have, but it was bad enough dealing with the elders' demands to keep you in the village. If I allowed you a chance for promotion to a rank that represented your skills, you would be expected to lead missions outside of the village. They never wanted you to leave the village, so my compromise was leaving you as a genin under the watch of Kakashi. The former Hokage explained. As fascinating as this is, I was hoping we could discuss a time where we could train, Rei said finally. She was a little irritated that the 3 more experienced shinobi were ignoring them. Oh right, well I guess if tomorrow is off the table, then we will meet at this time in 2 days. We can start with some basic first aid. Oh, and bring your squads along, Karen answered quickly. Meanwhile, Nen-Nisan has been working us to the bone. This is so much worse than when we were new graduates, Koha whined, collapsing against a tree alongside his squad. The young rust-haired teen looked disheveled. His robes were torn with dirt and grass stains scattered everywhere. Yeah, the last few weeks have been bad. Your brother is some sort of monster, a slightly older teen with similar colored hair agreed. You're all just weak, that's all. Came a derisive snort from one of the Uchiha recruits. Despite his claims to the opposite, the young boy was just as worn out as Koha, but his pride as a member of the royal family wouldn't allow him to admit it. Koha looked ready to retort, his face growing a scowl at being called weak, even beginning to get to his feet before a new voice cut him off. Then I suppose you could keep going then? Tetsu said, appearing in a calm manner. The young Uchiha scoffed and turned away. Of course, these training sessions are just a waste of time for someone like me, he declared, not daring to make eye contact in case his bluff was called. Oh well, then I'd better up my game in the future then, Tetsu replied casually, allowing a small smirk when he saw the boy wince slightly. But don't worry, I'll let everyone know that you decided my training wasn't adequate, and that from tomorrow our training will be doubled. What? Nisan, you can't. We can barely walk as it is, Koha whined, but soon had to recoil from the angry glare that Tetsu gave him. I am not your brother while I'm on duty. I am your commanding officer, and I have been told to train our division to the best of my ability, and that is what I will do. If one person feels they are not getting the most out of my training, then I need to do more, Tetsu declared. What's the point? We're just going to be used as glorified sacrifices anyway, an older man with silver hair declared. He had clearly been around the military for a long time but never progressed past the level of a mid-ranked officer. Tetsu knew what the man was hinting at but didn't want him to lower the moral, even if he was just about spot on with his assessment. For this reason he chose to ignore the statement. His brother was another case, however. "What are you talking about?" he demanded. "What they haven't told you?" the elder man asked with a laugh. "Kid, we are going to be responsible for taking down that monster that tore the placement trials apart. It happened on Goharaheim's watch, so that means he's her responsibility." Koha for once was stunned into silence. He had followed his brother's instructions during the trials and stayed well away from the blonde, but he had also seen on the screens that hung over the arena what he had done to elite soldiers that were sent to deal with him. "Why, you don't know that?" Even the cocky young Uchiha seemed a little worried at this revelation, but upon reflection it made perfect sense. It was exactly how his family operated. They're set up in our land as well, so it all points to being Gohara's responsibility. "So how long do we have, sensei?" Tetsu sighed, knowing that there was no point in hiding it now. "We have until the end of the year to deal with the rebellion," he answered honestly. "So less than 3 months, great, but I bet whoever lands the killing blow will get quite the reward," the young Uchiha said with a slight smirk that appeared as little more than a grimace. "That's why we need to train even harder. We still do not know all that he is capable of, and now he has allies and a handful of deserters, including a member of your own family, Shugo," Tetsu declared, before turning around, hoping that the revelation would at the very least light a fire under the squad, making them train harder. The next morning, Naruto sleepily rolled over to give Karen a quick kiss before getting up, only to find the bed empty. "Strange, she usually sleeps in longer than I do," he thought while stretching out with a yawn. "She left almost an hour ago," Kurama said calmly. "Huh, really? That's not like her. I usually have to force her to get up," the blonde thought in reply. "My guess is she wanted to prepare something for your birthday," the fox reasoned in a lazy drawl. Naruto smiled, remembering that it was indeed his birthday, and quickly moved to have a shower and get changed for the day. Surprisingly, Karen was not waiting for him downstairs either, nor was she in the kitchen preparing breakfast. "She's not here either. Actually, now that I think about it, I haven't seen Swandaba-chan this morning either. I would guess they are waiting for you somewhere. The only thing currently in the compound that I can sense is Shikaku," Kurama mused with mild interest. Naruto nodded and sat down to collect some natural chakra to enter sage mode. "They're in my training ground, but that's not all. A bunch of the toads are there as well," he concluded with mild surprise. "They must have summoned themselves to me at some point while I was asleep." Wasting no more time, Naruto hopped out of a nearby window and sped across the compound, and hopping over the wall, jumping over rooftops, and running along the sides of larger towers, heading towards the large walls of the city, leaping over the towering walls and landing in the open fields as if they were no higher than getting out of bed. Finally coming to his little private training area, he came to a stop. Tsunade, Karen along with all his students and Shugo were waiting at the far end of the field behind a large banner that read "Happy Birthday Naruto." All around them the toads were gathered, and upon his arrival the giant battle toads joined them, including Gamabunta. "Took you long enough, Naruto-chan," Fukusaku spoke with a smile. Naruto was still stunned. He had never really celebrated his birthday with more than one person. First was the Sandaime, who would take him out for ramen. The rest had been spent with Jiraiya. Wow, was all he could really get out. He would have been happy spending the day with Karen on a date, but seeing everyone come together for him made him feel indescribable happiness. "Well, this is a first, never seen him speechless before." Tsunade laughed before pulling the younger blonde into a hug. "Thanks, Bachan, you're the best," Naruto whispered with a beaming smile and readily returned the hug as he scanned all his new friends that had come out to celebrate. He then noticed a large pile of scrolls. "What's all this?" "Ah, that would be your inheritance, Naruto-chan," Shima said, hopping over and handing him a large scroll with the name Kushina Uzumaki on it. "Huh? I had inheritance?" Naruto queried, seemingly stunned by the revelation that his parents actually left him something. "Of course, everything your parents owned was left to you, to be given to you when you came of age. You also inherited everything of Jiraiya-chan's," Shima answered quickly. Naruto still seemed a little lost, so Fukusaku decided to clear a few things up. "Jiraiya-chan never had any children, that we knew of anyway," Tsunade added with a small bark of laughter, just thinking about a mini Jiraiya running around. "Knowing Jiraiya-chan, you might be right, Tsunade-chan," Fukusaku laughed. "With the said, he was also your legal guardian, so when they died their belongings passed on to him to hold until you were of age. He had no property of his own, being a hermit, so he left them with us. They were far safer in Myobo-cousin than in Konoha. That is why we were holding on to your parents' belongings, Naruto-chan." "But what about Erosen and stuff? Shouldn't that go to Konoha if he had no children?" Naruto asked, half torn between continuing the conversation and exploring everything that his parents left him. "That would normally be the case, However, shortly after you came back from your training trip, he came and asked to change his will to leave everything he owned to you," Tsunade said with a smile, knowing how much Jiraiya cared for the young Uzumaki. In actual fact, this happened just before he left to investigate Pain. It was like somehow he knew he wouldn't be coming back, but she didn't think he needed to know that much. Naruto couldn't help but smile at the thought that Jiraiya had cared so much. Jiraiya had left a large number of scrolls that had stored all of the Toad Sage's belongings, and strangely a large chest that was covered in a sealing matrix that Naruto couldn't even begin to understand. "Why isn't this sealed with everything else?" he asked upon closer inspection. "We can't seal it. Probably something to do with the seals that Jiraiya-chan placed on it," Fukusuka reasoned. "We can't even open the damn thing," Shima added. This made even Tsunade interested. She had never heard of anything like this. "Do you know what it is?" she asked, her interest showing. The two elder toads sighed and shook their heads in disappointment. "I'm afraid your guess is as good as mine, Tsunade-chan. All he ever told us was that it had something to do with that other teammate of yours. Every year he would come and add more seals. If it has something to do with the snake freak, we probably shouldn't go messing around with it," Karen said with a little worry. Nothing that involved Orochimaru had ever worked out great for the redhead. That goes without saying. Erosenin didn't teach me all that much about seals, but I know not to go messing with them. Anything that can be used to seal away something as strong as Kurama isn't something we should take for granted," Naruto replied with some maturity that the others hadn't expected from him. Tsunade had half expected him to have already attempted to open the chest. "You can go through that stuff later, Naruto-chan. We all have presents for ya," Shima said, and she pulled out a new sage cloak. This one shined a silvery white, almost as if it was illuminated. On the back there were 9 magnetoma that were colored to resemble the bijou. At the center between the 2 shoulder blades a Uzumaki swirl sat proudly, and under that was the kanji for sage. One by one his friends came and gave him their gifts. Tsunade was particularly jealous of the large bottle of Myobokuzen sake that Gamabunta gave him, going even so far as to threaten to return him to Konoha in a body bag if he didn't share that particular gift. Once the gift-giving was out of the way, everyone sat down to a large picnic that Tsunade and Shugo had prepared. Through it all, Naruto couldn't stop smiling, and for the first time truly overjoyed that it was his birthday. Chapter 50. A New Yet Old Sensei. Naruto sat at a desk reading over the scrolls of jutsu that his parents had left for him. Many of his father's notes seemed to be focused around the Nidaime Hokage, who Naruto guessed he idolized. "I guess it sort of makes sense there are so many jutsu invented by the Nidaime in here. They were both kind of nerdy. I mean, look at all these books he left me on time-space theory. Who would enjoy reading these?" "Well, I do for one," Karen's voice called out a little groggily. She entered the room in one of Naruto's shirts and little else, rubbing the sleep out of her eyes. "It's almost dawn, and you haven't come to bed yet." The blonde Uzumaki sheepishly rubbed the back of his neck in embarrassment. "Sorry, Karen-chan. I must have lost track of time. But there is just so much here. Ka-chan left me so many books on Fuinjutsu that I have barely any idea about. Then my two-san has all these books on the Nidaime and time-space manipulation that I can't even begin to understand. And that's before I even start with Erosen and stuff." Karen couldn't help but smile at the enthusiasm of the young man. The eager glint in his eye to learn everything he could reminded her of herself when Orochimaru had coerced her into leaving Kusa to join him in studying jutsu. The reality in her case had been more that she had been used to simply keep the experiments alive with Sasuke there to keep her submissive. She quickly shook off the thoughts of her less than pleasant past and decided to focus on the new life she had found for herself. "I know you're excited to have new things to learn, so am I actually. But they're not going to disappear if you get a few hours sleep," she sighed lightly and without resistance, pulling him out of his seat. "Besides, I can't get comfortable. I need my personal body heater back." It had been getting colder recently. Clearly they were heading towards winter. Somewhere in the back of his mind, Naruto realized that he had yet to experience what winter was like in these lands, but his thoughts drifted elsewhere as the moment Karen pulled him down onto the bed and into her embrace he finally noticed how horribly tired he was. He quietly managed to yawn out a good night and give the redhead a light kiss before he began to drift off. It was only a short sleep for Naruto, however, as he was forced to wake not long after the sun hit his window. He complained as anyone short of sleep would, but in practiced fashion from years of little sleep on missions and traveling with Jiraiya was able to get himself out of bed and ready for the day. "Alright, first things first, I need to get my clones to start reading all of these scrolls my parents and Erosenin left behind. I was at least able to get them organized by topic last night. So if that's what your clones are doing, then what are you going to do?" "I don't imagine you teaching the students yourself," Karen giggled. Naruto grinned and showed that he already had a scroll in his hand. "I got two sans taijutsu style. It's supposed to be used at extreme speeds and against multiple opponents, so it would be perfect to combine with my bijou cloak once I get it down. Well, in that case I want to learn this, Karen declared, picking up a jutsu scroll with an Uzumaki swirl emblazoned on the front. One of Ka-chan's jutsu. Which one? The blonde asked, intrigued, almost hoping to work on it with Karen. A jutsu designed to use the hour chakra chains. I've never really used them for anything, and I've only ever really used them at times of desperation. So I think now would be a good time to learn, and these scrolls are almost hand-picked for me to learn, Karen said with a grin of her own. So I take it that you will be sending a clone to teach your class today as well then? How irresponsible, Naruto laughed. The young couple made their way to the large kitchen for a quick breakfast. Tsunade was already reading over a scroll left in Jiraiya's possession. Naruto had given the last remaining Sannin free roam over her old teammate's possessions, knowing she missed the old pervert just as much if not even more than he did. Good morning, Tsunade-sama, Karen greeted respectfully, earning a welcoming smile. So find anything good yet, Bachan? Like what's the deal with that weird chest we can't open? Naruto added far less respectfully than his significant other. Why should I tell you, you damn disrespectful gaki, Tsunade snapped with no real venom. I don't be like that, Bachan, Naruto whined with a fake pout. Tsunade sighed, shaking her head at the younger blonde's antics. Nothing on the chest. Jiraiya didn't seem to leave any instructions for it. I guess we just need to decipher the seals. Unfortunately, that's not really my strongest area. Many seem to be based on old Uzumaki seals, I can tell that much. He probably used notes from her sealing scrolls, but they were locked by an Uzumaki blood seal. Only a Uzumaki could open the scrolls. Karen protested. Minato and to a lesser extent Kushina were like Jiraiya's own family. He never owned property. Most of his money was spent to fund the village's spy network, so whenever he was in Konoha he stayed with Minato. In fact, it was Kushina that taught Minato many of his advanced sealing techniques, Tsunade answered. Including the seals he used to seal Kurama and us, Naruto added. He already knew this much from the brief moment he had met and talked with his mother. That's correct. But during that time she also spared a little time for Jiraiya, who was always decent with seals, but after learning from little Kushina became a master in his own right, even if he never put in the time and effort to be as far advanced as Minato, who was able to combine ninjutsu and fuinjutsu to unparalleled levels. Tsunade continued. So they are seals taught to him by Kushina-sama? Karen asked skeptically. She had seen several advanced seals during her time, most notable being Orochimaru's cursed seal. But the seals on the large chest left by Jiraiya were unlike any she had seen before. Tsunade shook her head. That would have helped, but most of those seals will be the work of Jiraiya himself. But I'm sure he would have had a small amount of Uzumaki blood courtesy of Naruto here for him to use the Uzumaki scrolls to his work. What? How could he do that? Karen yelled in indignation, looking to Naruto to back her up, but the blonde just shrugged. Why don't you care that he used your blood and took advantage of having what looks like multiple generations of Uzumaki fuinjutsu theory? Naruto didn't really have a proper response. I'm sure Erosenin had his reasons, and I'm sure they were probably used for the good of Konoha. So that's it, you just forgive him? He could have stolen your blood when you were a baby. Karen raged, indignant at the thought of someone hurting Naruto, even though the irony was that not too long ago she would have killed him had Sasuke simply asked for it. I'm alive? There's really no point getting worked up over this, Karen-chan. I'm sure for whatever reason Erosenin made that chest, it was really important, so one day when I can understand what the seals do I'll open it and find out for myself, and until then I'll just keep believing in Erosenin, Naruto replied. Hearing Naruto defend his sensei's actions had the desired effect and Karen could no longer stay mad. You really are an overly forgiving baka sometimes, Naruto-kun, she sighed, taking a seat. Naruto smiled, taking that as a compliment. Don't worry, Karen-chan, the gaki forgives everyone, but I'm sure you're still his favorite, Tsunade added with a smirk. Causing the pair to blush. They're still children, no matter what they do, she thought with a smirk. Well, it's either you or Gaara. He was pretty desperate to save the young Kazekage. Tsunade's continued teasing forced Karen to look to the blonde for confirmation that amused the slug Sannin still further. Don't worry, Karen-chan, you are my favorite, the blonde chuckled, seeing the funny side of the elder blonde's teasing. Karen smiled, leaning forward to whisper in the blonde's ear. Good, because you're my favorite too, she teased before stealing a quick kiss. Naruto quickly returned the kiss, but they were brought out of their private little moment by a loud cough from Tsunade, who now had a stony, almost expressionless face. Save it for when you're alone, I take it you both have things to do. Also, Naruto, when you're ready, there is that letter from Kakashi, which had a time-release seal on it. He said it's not important and to open it when you had some free time. But maybe you shouldn't wait too long. Oh man, I completely forgot about Kakashi-sensei's letter, Naruto admitted. Clearly embarrassed, he made a mental note to check the letter before he went out to train. The rest of breakfast was spent with the three talking happily, reporting on promising students that they were teaching, and how the changes to the village and surrounding areas were progressing. Karen left first, sending a single clone to teach the beginners class while she went in the other direction to a secluded training area. Naruto, on the other hand, had to create a large number of clones, ordering them to each study a specific topic in groups of about 10. Knowing he was not the brightest of people, he decided to make sure that each clone would read every book at one level before moving on to more advanced theory. It might take longer, but if they each read every book, then I basically read each of them 10 times. Checking that he still had the scroll for his father's taijutsu style, Naruto decided he would take Kakashi's letter with him. He passed through the village at a brisk yet still casual speed, joyfully greeting the civilians and recruits alike that were out in the early morning completing their daily chores or simply on the way to work. Overall, the city had completely changed in the months since they had taken over. The people that remained now seemed to move about happily, no longer in fear of the gangs or the corrupt laws of the empire. Finally coming to the edge of the city, Naruto made little work of running up the giant walls before hopping to the ground below, and taking off to his own training ground. Once out in the clearing, he grabbed Kakashi's letter and sat down under a tall tree that, despite lacking a few leaves courtesy of misplaced jutsu, still offered some shade. "Alright, sensei, let's see what you've got to tell me," he thought out loud. Only to be surprised when, as he broke the seal and began to open the letter, it burst into a cloud of smoke. "Ah, what the hell? Did you really send that just to play a prank? I swear one of these days I'll make Kakashi-sensei pay," he yelled while waving the smoke away from his face. "Mama, Naruto, is that any way to treat your beloved sensei?" Naruto froze at the voice. He knew it all too well. Hell, he could practically feel his condescending eye smile. "Kakashi-sensei?" he asked, still not quite ready to believe his eyes as the smoke was too thick around him. "Not quite, but close enough," the same voice called out, finally reaching out and pulling Naruto to his feet, bringing the blonde face to face with his silver-haired sensei. "You've sure grown, Naruto." Naruto was at a loss for words. He couldn't believe Kakashi was here with him. "How?" was all that he could manage to get out. "I thought that would be obvious with how proficient you are with the jutsu." "I sealed a shadow clone in a seal that would break once the letter was opened," Kakashi explained, still taking in the changes in the blonde since he had faked his death. "You're taller than me now. I guess I can't call you my cute little Genin anymore." "It's good to see you too, sensei," Naruto laughed. "Yes, well, I seem to have a small problem with my students running off without permission. I figured that even if I couldn't bring you back, I could at least talk to you," Kakashi said while pulling out his little orange book. "You made a shadow clone copy of Ika? Naruto asked in disbelief. "I don't get a lot of time to read anymore, being Hokage and all," the clone answered in a matter-of-fact tone, as if it was the most simple answer in the world. "So I take it you received your inheritance from the toads?" he asked while flipping a page. "Yeah, I did. I have clones reading all Tsu-san and Ka-san's books as we speak," the younger shinobi said with a cheer, still as eager as ever to learn. "So I guess it's a good thing I'm here then. Nobody knows Minato-sensei's techniques better than I do," Kakashi replied with another eye smile. "Really, you can help? Great, I was about to try learning the kata for my father's taijutsu. I'm sure you would have copied it. Wait, do you still remember the jutsu you copied now that you don't have a Sharingan anymore?" Naruto asked, scratching his head, wondering just how the Uchiha's eyes actually work. "Naruto eyes don't remember things," Kakashi deadpanned. Seeing the blonde still giving him a confused look, he sighed. "Some things never change. The Sharingan improves the ability to process information to the point it can predict to almost a certainty what will happen next. Like seeing the future," Naruto replied, earning a chuckle from the silver-haired Hokage at the reference to their first ever real mission as a team. "Yes, but in truth it's analyzing the jutsu and predicting what hand seals are needed or the trajectory of a punch. The truth is the eyes are not special, it's how they affect the neurological pathways to the brain," Kakashi lectured, but it was quite clear that a few things were not quite getting through to him. "In other words, I still know all of the jutsu I knew with the Sharingan, however it's likely that I can never use Raikiri to its full extent again." Naruto nodded sadly. He knew the Raikiri was Kakashi's prized jutsu. "Because you can't see well when you use it anymore, right?" "Correct. I have a theory that might help, but for that I will need to learn to react at faster speeds. I'm hoping Kurabi can help me with that actually," Kakashi answered. It was at that point realization seemed to strike for Naruto. "Wait, that's right, you're really good with right-hand manipulation." "I need help." "Well, right-hand is my primary element just like futon is yours," Kakashi answered. "Well, not anymore. Because of my connection with all of the Bijou and Rikudaji giving me his chakra, I can now use all the elements, but none of the toads know how to use right-un. Something about it not mixing with their summon's nature, Naruto explained still somewhat urgently. So you want a crash course in right-un manipulation then? Well, I'm here to help, so let's get started, Kakashi said before pulling out a book of chakra paper and handing a piece to the blonde. Why, I told you what my elements were, Naruto queried. Call it curiosity, Kakashi answered. He was simply waiting expectantly. Naruto shrugged, pushing a small amount of his raw chakra into the paper. Just as he expected, the paper split into 4 even parts. One section became damp, one burnt, one crumbled to dust, while the last crinkled up. See all 5 elements, the blonde said proudly. I can see that. Fascinating. Well, the first step, as you may have guessed, is making a leaf crinkle like that part of the chakra paper, the clone explained, picking a leaf from the tree and demonstrating the task. Yeah, and I've been trying, but all I get is small wrinkles in the leaf, Naruto whined, demonstrating his own lackluster attempt. Kakashi observed the blonde's struggles and silently wished he still had a Bito's eye. He would often be caught wearing his forehead protector as if he was still hiding the Sharingan eye of his ex-friend, even though as Hokage he had no reason to wear one at all. I think you may be treating the element too much like it's wind. You are applying the wrong type of force, he guessed. What do you mean? The blonde asked. Unlike all the other elements, lightning is the hardest to control in its raw state. This is because of its nature. It is unrefined and untamed, only appearing for a moment before disappearing. It's not sustained like wind or the flow of water. It cannot be contained like fire or earth. Even the most stable of right-un jutsu have points that seem like they're unstable, because that is the nature of the element. Kakashi lectured. So I need to lose control of Mu chakra? Naruto guessed. Kakashi shook his head. Not quite. Think of it more like controlled chaos. Then when using it, your chakra needs to act quick, almost like an instant explosion of chakra spreading out from the point. Naruto nodded with a look of determination and picked up another leaf, ready to try again. He didn't get the desired result, but there was a marked improvement over the previous attempt. Awesome, thanks Kakashi-sensei. Don't mention it, a little more work and I think you'll get it. The copy ninja complimented. Amazing, he showed that much improvement from just a few words. You really have grown, Naruto. Do you want to continue, or would you like to start work on your father's taijutsu? Let's work on the taijutsu. You already really helped me out with lightning, I should be able to get the rest on my own. Besides, I don't even know how much chakra you have in that clone. Naruto replied. I'd say so long as I don't need to perform any jutsu, I'll have about a day, maybe a little longer. But that's neither here nor there. Let's begin with the basic stance, he ordered. Meanwhile, far away from the lively new country, another group of shinobi were training as if their very lives depended on it, mostly because they did. Groups were running through hand seals, taijutsu kata, or simply strenuous physical exercises. Again, Tetsu called once the groups began to slow down, signaling they had reached the end of the allotted exercise. A loud groan could be heard from the more inexperienced soldiers, but the older groups just grit their teeth and got to work. Tetsu moved to observe the group that decided to voice their opinion of the training, sending them a glare and threatening to double their workload if they complain again. My Tetsu, you really are working them into the ground. I must say I'm almost impressed. Came a rather bored yet silky soft call from the edge of the massive field where Tetsu was training his division. Realizing to whom the voice belonged, Tetsu fell to a knee and ordered everyone to do the same. Gahara-hime. It is not like you to inspect the soldiers like this. Really, is that all the response my presence gets from you, Tetsu-kun? Gahara purred. Tetsu gulped. He had no idea how to respond now. The truth was, the Uchiha princess was dressed to kill. She wore a tight low-cut black dress that hugged her hourglass form that was highlighted by blood-red lace, and a teardrop pattern that seemed to fall from the Uchiha fan worn on her back. While the blood-release wielder managed to maintain a stoic expression, some of the other men could be caught openly leering at the wind goddess of death. You are breathtaking as always, Gahara-hime, he finally managed. Yet sadly no reaction. Perhaps I should try something else, the albino said, ignoring the compliment completely. Her mood then seemed to darken considerably. Train your men better, she yelled. Then every man that had dared react to her looks, as well as a few of the more adventurous kunoichi, were struck with a blade of wind that sent them toppling over with a deep cut, each one in the same place just below the right eye. Only those who I chose may look at me with such vulgar eyes, she spat before turning to leave. She was halfway across the field before her voice rang out again. Tetsu, come see me when you have finished training this filth. Only once Gahara was long gone did Tetsu release the breath that he had been holding in. The squads around him all began to relax, seeing their commander do the same. What the hell was that, Ni-san? Koha called out, no longer afraid of repercussions. That was Gahara-sama being merciful. Tetsu chuckled, knowing the punishment she usually put him through during otherwise pleasant conversation. Merciful, she just crippled half of the men. Koha stammered. And some of the women. Kara, the kunoichi of the young iron wielder's team, muttered with a slight blush, guessing the reason why. That was a warning. My guess is we do not have much time left. Tetsu explained, rubbing his cheek, a small trickle of blood rolling down from a deep wound he had sealed with his own chakra and bloodline limit. She was testing our reaction. Does she truly intend to attempt to seduce Naruto? I'm not sure what would be worse for us. If she succeeds, she will have the ire of the Empire. If she fails, then our men will be like labs to the slaughter against him and those giant creatures he can control. Time left for what? If we're supposed to be ready for a fight, why injure our soldiers? Koha questioned. As far as first impressions, Gahara had left a rather shocking one on Tetsu's younger brother. Only a slight delay to the more hormonal side of adolescence had spared the young teen the same punishment as others. Tetsu sighed in half agreement. His brother had a point after all. Gahara-hime has a rather unique outlook on things. To her, pain is a motivation. Those who can't deal with pain or punishment are not worthy to live, he explained. That's insane. Who could think that way? Kara gasped in shock. Tetsu paused, unsure how to explain his superior's actions. I agree, not everyone is as durable as others. However, in this instance, Gahara is simply treating others the way she has been treated. She too is a bit of a black sheep in her family. For one, unlike most Uchiha, she has white hair as opposed to their usual black. For a family that deems anything out of character for their family a weakness, then she lacks the Uchiha family's katana affinity. In short, she was mistreated and deemed a failure. Really? But she's so powerful, how could they consider that a failure? Koha asked, clearly stunned at the revelation. She wasn't always that strong, Koha. She forced herself to be strong in order to escape her family's abuse. That is why she believes pain and punishment make someone strong. Tetsu lectured, then realized that almost everyone he was supposed to be training was listening in rather than working. What are you all looking at? Get to work. Later that day, not bad at all. What happened to my cute little genin who could barely throw a decent punch? Kakashi chuckled as he watched Naruto effortlessly flow through kata, striking a makeshift training post the blonde had made shortly after moving into the city and declaring independence from the Empire. That was 6 years ago, and I could always throw a punch, said cute little genin, replied with a pout. I'm sure you could, Kakashi replied with some mirth. So when do you plan on taking a break? I wouldn't mind having a look around this village of yours. Naruto ran though a few more kata, then came to a halt. Well, I'm basically done, so we can go check it out now. But there is somewhere we have to go first. Kakashi quirked an eyebrow but showed enough interest to at least put his precious orange book away. Is that so? Then lead the way. The two tree-hopped across a few training fields, mostly filled with the blonde's clones working on various jutsu or elemental manipulation, till finally they came to a clearing that was almost empty. Just a single red head sitting still in the center of a large clearing, a few chains rising from her palms as sweat coated her brow from the intense concentration she needed. Now isn't this interesting? Kakashi mused, his casual tone hiding the shock of seeing the same chakra chains that Kushino was well known for. Yeah, Karen-chan has the same Kikei Genkai as Ka-san. But that's not why I wanted you to come here, Naruto replied with a smile. Kakashi was about to ask why when Naruto cut him off. Hey Karen-chan, the call broke Karen's concentration. The chains she was supporting seemed to collapse, receding back into the various points from which they were summoned. Still she smiled at hearing the blonde's voice. Naruto-kun, why are you here? Her voice was lost as she caught sight of the man beside him. How, Mama, are you underestimating the Hokage young lady? Kakashi said, his tone quite firm, surprising Naruto while Karen was frozen, unsure if he was going to do anything that may harm her in any way. Kakashi-sensei, Bachan did mention Karen-chan in her report, right? The blonde questioned, a little on edge while subtly positioning himself to get in the way should Kakashi attack. He really didn't want to have to defend his girlfriend from his old sensei. Immediately Kakashi's demeanor changed, giving the pair a nice smile. Of course she did. I was just testing to see if you still remembered my first lesson. I was afraid you forgot that those who abandon their friends are worse than trash. Naruto's head was hung in shame. He didn't want Kakashi to think of him that way. Sensei, I didn't. The blonde didn't get to finish though as Kakashi spoke up. I'm proud to see that you not only remember that lesson but have taken it a step further. Always protect your family. I'm proud of you, Naruto, he spoke with yet another eye smile. Naruto visibly relaxed, his stance slackening. Oh, thank Kami, you had me scared for a second there. Naruto-kun, do you want to tell me what the hell is going on? The redhead asked, or more like demanded. How the hell is Kakashi Hatake here? Are we going to have any more guests? Relax, Karen-chan. Kakashi-sensei is a shadow clone he sealed in the message he left me for my birthday. He's been helping me train all day. But I thought who better to help you learn your element than sensei. Naruto beamed happily. But we don't have any chakra paper. I can't figure out what my element is. We have already been through that. Swan-sama hasn't gotten any from the slugs yet. Karen replied. That's not a problem, Kakashi replied, revealing a small book of chakra paper tags. My original goal for the day had been to teach Naruto a new element, so I sealed extra chakra paper in the letter. It appears I was a little late to the punch though, as he can now use almost all elements now without my help. He added a small depressed sigh at the end before reverting back to his normal self. Regardless, that means I can test your affinity right now. Karen was a little taken aback. She had just been yelling and now she felt a little like an idiot. Oh, thank you, she stammered slightly as she reached out to take one of the small pieces of paper. She waited a minute before channeling her chakra. The paper crumbled from one end and began to soak from the other. So Doton and Suiton, right? She questioned. She was surprised to see two elements but couldn't deny she felt somewhat proud. That's right, both used predominantly for defensive jutsu but can be quite powerful in their own right if used on the offensive, Kakashi explained. Now I'm not the best at either but can use both quite proficiently. With that said, I'm sure Naruto can teach you what you need to know in terms of elemental manipulation. Yeah, we can start whenever you're ready, Karen-chan. But I wasn't to show Kakashi around the city, and I'm sure he needs to speak with Bachan as well. Naruto added eagerly. Yes, I should really discuss a few things with Tsunade-sama. It was nice meeting you, Karen-chan. I'm afraid it will not be easy to pardon you should you return, but I'm sure Naruto would find a way, Kakashi said, adding a friendly eye smile. Thank you, Hokage-sama. But I don't know if we will ever return, Karen admitted. The thought of living a safe life in Konoha with Naruto was quite enticing, but she knew he had left for a reason and there was no going back now. Mama, never say never. In this world anything is possible. The copy ninja gave one last eye smile before turning towards the large city walls. Now that is impressive, Konoha could learn a thing or two. With his final piece said, Kakashi walked off, forcing Naruto to follow after him. Chapter 51. Approaching Threat. Naruto and Kakashi spent several hours traveling around the large city. Kakashi had marveled at the sheer size of the city. Well, I am surprised. Tsunade had informed me you were living in a small run-down village in a forest. When you told me what had happened since then, I expected maybe a village the size of Konoha. I never expected the city to be this large. It even makes Ames seem small in comparison, the current Hokage mused. Naruto nodded. He had reacted the same way when he had first seen the city. But upon learning more about the land he was in, he began to understand a little more. Well, it helps that before Madara appeared on the side of the mountains they had very few wars. It must be a lot easier to develop and grow a city if there isn't a constant threat of war hanging over your head. The elemental nations spent so long at each other's throats that any major developments would be seen as a threat to the other nations. Kakashi could see the reasoning behind this. He could also see that the large walls would make it almost impossible for anyone who did not have chakra to attack the village. Overall, it was the strong defenses that he supposed each nation had that would help prevent any aggression. Sure, it wasn't foolproof. There were several strategies he could think of just on the top of his head that would work to assault such a target, but it was a start. Well, it's a good thing that the major nations have come together in an alliance then. Maybe we can begin to develop parts of the Land of Fire like this, maybe even Konoha. Well, I'm not sure about the walls. It sends the wrong message in my opinion. I would want the city to be as welcoming as possible. Plus, I think Konoha needs the trees. A Konoha surrounded by giant towers rather than forests wouldn't be the village hidden in the leaves anymore, would it? Naruto replied. No, I suppose it wouldn't, Kakashi replied with an eye smile, his face still buried in his precious orange book, only looking up whenever Naruto would point out an area of interest, or he was greeted by one of the many townsfolk who seemed to hold the young blonde in some form of reverence. As the day was starting to come to a close, Naruto led the former copy ninja to the central palace complex. And this is where we live now, the blonde declared, pointing to the large official-looking mansion. While Kakashi was surprised at the size of the mansion, he was more stunned by what he noticed out of the side of his eye. A large creature almost twice the size of a cow began bounding its way towards them. This is going to cause me so many headaches in the future, he thought out loud when Shikaku came to a stop before them. Welcome home, Naruto-sama, the Bija said politely. Shikaku, how many times do I have to tell you not to give me any honorifics? The blonde sighed exasperatedly. But Toussaint's legacy should be shown respect. The humans of this village treat you that way, so why can't I? Shikaku replied. its ears folding backwards in disappointment. Because you're my friend. I don't really like anyone talking to me like I am better than them, but I can't do anything about them, Naruto replied with a friendly smile. So the Ichibi has returned, and come to you, Naruto. It's not the most shocking thing considering you still have some of its chakra. But I am sure there will be some people not happy that the Bijou won't return. Kakashi added calmly, yeah, Shikaku's great. He can sense any movement around the village with his sand. Tsunade-bachan said it works very similar to how her grandmother seals work around Konoha. Although I never knew they were even there. The blonde admitted with a fox-like grin. So does this mean that all the other Bijou will be summoned here eventually? Kakashi asked. Well, we're not really forced to, but my brothers and sisters will certainly want to be here with Naruto-sama, Shikaku answered happily before Naruto had a chance to answer himself. Kakashi gave a sigh and relaxed quite a bit. That's actually a relief. That will mean that Karabi is the last Jinchuriki, and there will not be a struggle to claim the Bijou again once they reform after being released from the Jubi. Naruto was happy to hear this, but also a little worried about the state of the elemental nations. I would have hoped that everyone would have learned to get along with the Bijou and let them live in peace. Kakashi smiled knowing the blonde would feel that way. I understand, it is also a quite popular opinion amongst the younger generation. But as always there are still a few that are set in their ways. The new ideas will win out in the end, at least that's what I believe. But until then it's best that the Bijou remain hidden, and being here with you is probably the safest place for them. I find it slightly ironic that the safest place for Bijou is in the middle of a potential war against a family of crazed Uchiha, Naruto deadpanned. I'm more surprised that you know the meaning of irony. Kakashi chuckled and was joined in by Kurama in his head. Hey! I'm getting smarter, damn it! The blonde wailed. To their surprise it was Tsunade that answered, sticking her head out of the window of her office. You keep telling yourself that, Gaki. Now get in here so I can give a report to Kakashi. Naruto seemed to deflate, his head hung low, simply nodding his head walking into the mansion. Gone was any Uchiha symbol or sign of the empire, no grandiose statues or oppressive images. The walls were an off-white and marble that seemed to lift the room, making it welcoming, yet if Naruto was being honest, a little cold. He didn't pause to allow his former sensei to examine the room, simply leading Kakashi up a large spiral staircase. Tsunade's office was at the end of a long hall containing many rooms that were used from everything from offices to baths. Well, it's about time. Tsunade signed, taking a sip from a bottle of sake while filling out a form. I was wondering when you would get here, Kakashi. Kakashi's eyes widened slightly. You knew I had sealed a clone of myself in the letter? I guessed as much, Swanda replied. Why else have a time-release seal? I guessed it was either a clone to train Naruto one last time, or a list of your jutsu. But I also knew you wouldn't have enough time to do the latter, not while you're Hokage. Seems that I still have quite a bit to learn about surprises. You were able to see right through me. Kakashi's clone sighed. Still, it begs the question. If you can see through something like that, how can you never tell when someone is bluffing when you play cards? A tick mark appeared on the busted Kunoichi's forehead. I can tell, it's more that I have terrible luck. I see, my apologies, Kakashi replied with a bow. Alright, Kakashi, enough of the small talk. There are some things we need to go through before your clone returns. Tsunade replied, suddenly all business. Kakashi saw the change in her demeanor, and instantly became serious. Yes, I have heard from Naruto that things on this side of the mountains have changed significantly. Yes, after going through everything we know, I have a theory that young Karen seems to agree with, and it ties into Madara's goal with the final Tsukuyumi, Tsunade replied. She folded her arms atop the table and leaned forward. Kakashi was interested but saw little reason why this was important. Is this not a little late? Madara's plan failed the moment Black Zetsu turned on him to revive Kagaya. Madara was a very meticulous person, even able to fool my grand-uncle into believing he had killed himself similar to how Naruto did. He had plans for almost any outcome and was rarely trusting of anyone. So why did he simply go along with Black Zetsu's plan? Upon seeing this place, I think the Moon's Eye plan was a means to an end. Madara always wanted Konoha to rule over all the nations, while my grandfather preached for peace between independent nations. Well, the Moon's Eye plan would bring peace in a roundabout way, Kakashi mused. Yes, but not the type that I think even he would be satisfied with long term. He was very manipulative, using Obito and even to a degree Zetsu to do his bidding, but I think he planned for his men from this empire to take over. They would control both empires. Maybe he had planned to use the Jubi to open a passageway across the mountains to allow the Uchiha clan he rebuilt in his image to control the elemental nations. Swanda proposed. Naruto seemed a little unconvinced. I don't know. The two Uchiha leaders that I fought had no idea where Konoha was, although they were very interested. Maybe, but what Tsunade suggested does match with Madara's past actions. He wanted to be in charge, to rule over everyone. It's possible that these Uchiha you fought were simply either not high enough up the pecking order to know, or not old enough to have any information on the plan. Regardless, we stopped Madara and Kaguya, so it's not really an issue. Kakashi replied. Naruto nodded his agreement. Even if Madara had planned on having the Uchiha clan rule over the elemental nations, it wasn't going to happen anymore. Tsunade, however, was a little more pensive. While I agree for the most part, I wouldn't rule out the possibility of Madara having more than one plan for the Empire. Madara wouldn't want to have all his eggs in one basket, and to be honest, trusting everything to Obito must have been a long shot. My guess is initially he had planned to use the Zetsu army to give the Empire's forces far superior numbers to any of the individual hidden villages, with Obito and the Akatsuki acting as either a distraction or as a long shot to make his goal easier. So you're suggesting that the Empire on this side of the elemental nations may be working on a way to make it to the elemental nations? Kakashi mused. He had to admit her proposition did have some validity. He had been risking far more than a simple gamble when he left Obito with Zetsu in hopes of them collecting all of the bijou together and reviving the Jubi. Whoa, are you serious, Bachan? I mean, sure, we were able to pass the insurmountable peaks, but that was because I have Kurama, and you can't be killed, Naruto queried. He didn't like the sound of more war coming to the elemental nations, not when he had sacrificed everything to stop the fighting. Tsunade nodded dimly. She didn't like the prospect any more than Naruto did. I'm sorry, but do think it's a very real possibility. I also doubt they will be attempting to cross over the mountains, but that just means instead of going over, they will dig under. It may also explain why Obito was found by Madara in the land of Earth. Kakashi finished for the former Hokage. Digging so far, that's insane, it would take years. Naruto gasped. But don't forget how long ago this empire was founded, Tsunade proposed. Realization struck the blonde, in a rather chilling way. Over 100 years ago, they could be almost finished. True, in that time it could be done, but I doubt he was able to start work on day one, or even had that particular goal initially. Otherwise, it's likely that he wouldn't have bothered with the Moon's Eye plan at all. The numbers he gained simply from the Zetsu clones would have been enough to overpower any nation while they were separated by past grievances. The former Hokage reasoned. Still, I would say it may not take them that much longer to break through. Difference is that there are no more Zetsu clones, and our nations are no longer divided, Kakashi added with a smile. That's true, but now we have two positions that the Empire was not expecting. 1. You know to be ready should they appear, and 2. Naruto has started a rebellion on this side of the mountains that should draw their attention towards us. Swanda finished sitting back with a broad smirk. Well then, Naruto, it looks like I have one last mission for you. I need you to prevent this empire from ever reaching the elemental nations. We have seen enough war for one lifetime, Kakashi said, turning to his young pupil. Naruto sighed. He had no desire to fight the empire, so long as they left him and his men alone. He was, however, not as ignorant as to think that it would ever work out that way. He also knew of the risk they posed to the newly found peace in Konoha. I'll do my best, sensei, but I can't just run head first into the center of the empire and tear it down. That would be suicide, even for me, he said honestly. I don't think we should change our plan too much for now anyway, Tsunade interrupted. She paused to pour another saucer of sake, taking a quick sip before continuing. Easiest way to win this war is to get the people to believe in what you stand for. If we act as the aggressors, the civilians will fear us and could prove unhelpful when the time comes. But acting in retaliation as we have planned to do and treating our citizens well will draw more support to us. You can't fight this whole thing alone, Naruto. Naruto was about to answer when a small trickle of sand began flying in through a nearby window until a small version of Shikaku formed on the blonde's shoulder. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I can sense a small creature fast approaching. It appears to be using, or is controlled by chakra. The three occupants of the room tensed. Naruto quickly made a clone that took off across the city. If anyone knows what this is, it will be Shugo. Tsunade nodded, wholeheartedly agreeing with the younger blonde's actions. A few minutes passed in almost absolute silence before the door opened and Shugo walked in. The exiled Uchiha cast an interesting glance at Kakashi but didn't say anything about his presence. Naruto's clone informed me of what's going on. It's clearly a message from the Empire. I know the technique they're using and it's not used as an attack. The three Konoha ninja relaxed, but the bijou did not. Instead, Shikaku focused on the window. It's here. And through the window landed a small white dove, with a Sharingan eye. The dove looked around the window as if examining the group before it. It's a Sharingan jutsu similar to the one used to control me when I attacked Konoha, Kurama explained to Naruto. The bird is being controlled via a genjutsu, Naruto quickly informed the group. That's right, a jutsu taught to all high-ranking members of the Uchiha clan in order to communicate over larger distances. Shugo added. With some hesitation he leant forward and removed the letter. The bird seemed torn, shuffling uncomfortably as the letter was removed. The ting is probably acting up because you were supposed to take the letter, Naruto. Well, what does it say? Naruto asked, growing a little impatient. Wait a second. Before you open it we should check it for traps. Both Kakashi and Tsunade chorused together. Kakashi held out his hand to Shugo to take the letter. Here, let me open it. If a bomb goes off I'm only a clone anyway, and it's about time I head back. I can already imagine the headache I am going to get from using this jutsu for so long. Shugo was a little unsure who this man with the gravity-defying hair was, but it seemed as though Naruto and Tsunade trusted him enough. Sure, here you go, He paused, handing over the letter. It's Kakashi Hatake, Rokudame Hokage of Konoha, and Naruto's Jounin sensei, he said happily, taking the letter before quickly hopping out the window and moving a safe distance away before opening the letter. All occupants of the room flinched, expecting an explosion that didn't come. A second later Kakashi had returned. I believe it seems to be a letter of parley. This Gaara Uchiha wishes to speak with Naruto. Kakashi handed over the letter for everyone to read. Well, it's a good thing that it's not a trap then, Tsunade scoffed. Actually, I am not entirely sure that it is. In fact, this might actually be good news for us. Gaara is no fool, and unlike most of the Empire, she has witnessed Naruto's strength firsthand. She knows a trap will not work. I would suggest that we agree to meet, however we need to do it on our own terms. Say welcome her here with no more than 2 guards, Shugo suggested. Tsunade had to agree it was a decent deal. If nothing else they could get some information on the Empire's movements. I agree, it's a decent suggestion. Alright, fine, we will agree to a meeting here in the city in 2 weeks, and we will assure the safety of her and the 2 bodyguards of her choice. Tsunade quickly wrote a response and handed it to Naruto. I guess I need to sign this, I mean, she did address the letter to me. He chuckled, signing the letter before returning it to the dove that had stood like a statue ever since the letter had been removed. Once securely attached, however, the bird took off at lightning-quick speed out the window, heading north. If that is all, I really should go. I have stuck around long enough. It was good to see you again, Naruto, Tsunade-sama, Kakashi said, seemingly in deep thought before he disappeared in a puff of smoke. So he didn't come over the mountains like you did then? Shugo asked, a little unsure of what to make of Kakashi. No, he was a time-release clone that was activated once Naruto opened the letter he left him for his birthday. He was only here for today, Tsunade replied. Meanwhile, Tetsu was tired. He had trained the soldiers so hard that even he felt like he needed a good night's sleep. However, before that he had to meet with Gaara. The lights of her palace were just flickering to life, illuminating the grounds. The tall yet sparse trees that lined the pathways still cast a heavy shadow on the pathway from the setting sun. Servants still fussed around the ground, making everything look perfect for the temperamental princess, lest her ire be directed at them. With a sigh, he pushed open the doors into the foyer. His body seemed to lag behind as he stumbled up the stairs towards Gaara's office. When the door opened, he found the princess's attention was set firmly out the window. She didn't even turn away as she greeted the rusty-haired officer. It's about time, Tetsu-chan. I was getting worried you would have disobeyed my order. The albino princess still wore the same dress as earlier, however she had a white fur jacket pulled over her shoulders as the nights were beginning to cool as the Empire began to head towards winter. Never, I always comply with my orders, Gaara. Tetsu replied with some fatigue evident in his voice. Yes, I know, you are the ideal soldier, Gaara mused almost condescendingly, her eyes never drifting off the window. The curiosity finally got the better of him. Are you expecting something? He asked tentatively. For the first time since his arrival, Gaara turned to face Tetsu. She seemed to be in rather good spirits. Why, yes, I am, as a matter of fact. See, earlier today I sent out a message to our dear upstarts to the south in order to parley. Do you expect them to actually agree to such a thing after the whole placement trials mishap? Tetsu asked in all seriousness. A serene smile spread across Gaara's face, as if she knew something that Tetsu just simply couldn't comprehend. Of course they will. I am sure it will be on their terms. I am guessing even in the filthy little pit they call a capital. Well, we could use that time to have our men infiltrate the city. Tetsu nodded, liking the idea more and more. A thought that will have instantly gone through Shugo's little head. No, any dirty tricks will be of no use to us here. I am sure a limit will be set on the amount of bodyguards I am permitted. Surely it will be a low enough number so as to be under constant surveillance. So in other words, you plan to use this as an opportunity to pursue your infatuation with Naruto? Tetsu surmised. Yes, that is a bonus, Gaara replied in a sing-song voice, almost longingly. But more than that, it is an opportunity to inform him on how the Empire will act. I can inform him that the Empire will stop at nothing to destroy him. I am sure Shugo will have informed him of that already. Haim. You are also putting yourself at risk. He's far too dangerous to confront alone. Tetsu replied. Gaara's smile seemed to grow even more. She unconsciously licked her lips. Oh, I know. In fact, after going to the capital, I am even more confident in Naruto-kun's strength. Aji team and the Crown Prince. Even together, Naruto-kun's chakra dwarfs theirs. Then why? Tetsu was cut off when for the first time in their conversation Gaara had a flash of annoyance cross her features. He was left stone silent with a glare. Because as much as it pains me to say, I would not be able to defeat them by myself. For the first time in his life, Tetsu saw anguish on the beautiful albino's face. I hate them, she seethed, the ground cracking from her use of wind. I want to see them suffer, to experience the utter humiliation that they put me through. I can't, but Naruto-kun, he could. Oh, how great it would be to see the hope and life leave the old man's eyes and his bastard son too. Let them rot, or better yet make them watch as I become empress. The anguish turned to ecstasy as she described what she would do to the emperor and crown prince if she ever got the chance. You think that Naruto is really that powerful? The crown prince has been trained since he was born to be the absolute strongest in the empire, Tetsu questioned. He was concerned for not only Gaara but for his own safety. He was Gaara's most trusted advisor now that Shugo had rebelled, a position that in itself was rather risky to one's health. But if she went into open revolt against the Empire, he would be branded a traitor to the Empire due to his position. Yet if he went to another member of the royal family with the information he had on her, he would never be trusted again at best and executed for deserting his post at worst. It's not my place to question your motives or actions, Gaara, but if the Emperor found out about this, it would mean your death. I am aware. In fact, he has already ordered us to our untimely deaths. We have already been through this. For the Empire, as you know, failure is not an option. It shows weakness, Gaara replied. Then I believe we should start making plans for when our attack on the south fails. Tetsu didn't like the idea of needlessly sending his troops to their deaths, but they had no real choice. Oh my, is little Tetsu-chan going to help me overthrow the Emperor? Gaara asked in a sing-song voice. My little pet is all grown up. It's by necessity. You are my commanding officer. Your orders are absolute, Tetsu replied. Gaara deflated slightly. You really are all business. You really need to lighten up. If I do, then we will be in an even worse position than we are now, the blood wielder replied almost casually. Gaara decided to let that one slide and summoned a large map of the Empire, unrolling it atop her desk. Fine, let's go over some contingency plans. Later that night, Naruto's clones began dispelling after carefully marking the current pages of their individual books, and for the first time in a long time for the blonde, he could say that he legitimately felt smarter at the end of the day. The clones that were delegated the books unsealing made the most progress. In the back of his mind, he wondered if that was due to the fact that he was an Uzumaki. By far the topic that went the worst was his father's notes on time-space manipulation. The topic was just so far over his head that even as much as he wanted to learn, he knew that at least for the time being it would be impossible. So for now, Naruto was going through the mass of scrolls that had still been unorganized. Most of these were Jiraiya's, and that was due to the fact that the Toad Sage had never bothered to organize them himself. There were a few of his parents' things thrown around here and there, mostly their belongings. He had found his father's old Jounin flak jacket that had obviously been sealed away by Jiraiya or Hiruzen after Minato's death. Upon trying it on, he found that it fit him quite nicely. He also found a set of his father's signature kunai once more, making him wish he was able to at least understand some of the theories covered in his father's scrolls. Karen meanwhile was sorting through Kushina's scrolls. She had been sorting through Jutsu's scrolls looking for more advanced techniques to try with her chains. Mixed in were her clothes and a few odd ninja tools, including an immaculate sealing set. Whoa, hey Naruto-kun, come look at this. She called upon unsealing yet another scroll. Naruto quickly moved over to see Karen holding a katana with a blade that would reflect even the dimmest light. The hilt was wrapped in blood-red cloth that matched Karen's and Kushina's hair. Finally, there was a Uzumaki symbol at the end of the hilt. That must be Ka-chan's sword. It's beautiful, and look at the blade. That must be chakra-conductive metal, the kunoichi added. It's a shame I'm not much of a weapon expert. I'm better suited to ninjutsu. But I bet a sword like that would work great with your chakra chains. You should take it, Naruto reasoned. What, really? But it's your mother's. You shouldn't give it away, The kunoichi protested. She had never been given anything so beautiful or valuable before, so she was slightly overwhelmed. Naruto chuckled at her stunned expression and gave her a quick kiss. I'm not giving it to just anyone. I'm giving it to you. If you can use it to protect yourself, then that's all I care about. Naruto replied with a smile. Now how about we find Ka-chan's old Kenjutsu scrolls? I bet the Uzumaki style will be in there. Chapter 52, Plans. The morning sun bathed the southern capital in a soft yellow glow. Farmers were busily tending to their herds and crops, all working together to feed the thriving young nation. While the civilians were happily going about their business, at the center of the city a meeting was going on. 2 days. We have 2 days to prepare, and your best idea is to wait and see what happens. A bald man who had exiled himself with Shugo stood from a kneeling position, flanked by the others who had joined the rebellion and those of Naruto's students that had so far been given active field positions. Well, I don't know what you want us to say, Saji. We agreed to a parley, and on our own ground no less. Gaara is many things, but one thing she is not is stupid. She knows as well as we do that peace can't be achieved. The rest of my family wouldn't let it happen. War is inevitable. Whatever her real goal in all this is, we don't know. But I agree we should let things play out, at least for now. Shugo replied. Unlike Saji, Shugo was sat at a table at the end of the hall. Next to him sat Naruto and Tsunade, with Karen sitting off to the side, not looking all that interested but still listening intently. So we just let her into the city with what? Free reign to go wherever she pleases? She will surely target Naruto or yourself, Shugo. We should use this as a chance to get rid of her without an army at her back. The bald man declared loudly, earning a few nods of agreement from some of the others in the briefing. Tsunade, seeing that they might lose the room, slammed her fist down on the table as she took to her feet, smashing the piece of furniture into splinters, but instantly gaining everyone in the room's attention. A show of hostility would not send the right message. We want to be different to the Empire, so I will not have any underhanded tactics used. We will meet with Gaara, see what she has to say, and if she tries anything, then we will stop her. She will have very limited protection, and Naruto has already shown that he can best her in a fight. That's right. Besides, it's possible that she doesn't want to attack us at all. Naruto added, there is no need to start a fight here. Forgive me, Naruto, but you don't know Gaara like we do. She is a cold-blooded assassin. She killed her husband just to take his position. The second you turn your back, there will be a blade in it. Saji replied almost pleadingly. Then I guess I will just need to watch my back then. The blonde replied casually. Tsunade didn't take kindly to that statement, and quickly knocked the blonde into the ground. Ow, what the hell, Ba-chan? Naruto whined as he picked himself up off the floor. As casual as you seem to be about your own safety, Gaki, I don't think we should ignore a possible threat so readily. You told me yourself that it would be suicide to take this woman on in taijutsu due to her control of wind. If she has such amazing control, she is definitely a threat. Tsunade answered, crossing her arms under her bust. Naruto looked down, aware that he was being lectured to make a point out of speaking so nonchalantly about someone who may try their hardest to see him dead. I get it, I need to be on guard. But Saji was right. I know nothing about Gaara, but it can't hurt to learn. Jiraiya said that peace can come through understanding, so I am going to use this meeting to hopefully get to know her. Maybe we can come to some understanding. I would also like to point out, Saji, that you do not know Gaara as well as I do. She certainly has a plan, but somehow I doubt that plan involves harming Naruto. At least not at this point in time, Shugo added. Okay, we get it. But we're here for a briefing, aren't we? Surely you have some assignments for us? Rei said, looking rather bored with the whole discussion. She knew that any objections were quite pointless. If Naruto had decided to trust the albino princess, then nothing was going to change his mind. Yes, and on that note, all missions outside the village will be put on hold until further notice. Tsunade answered, pulling out a list of files. An audible groan was heard, mostly from the more inexperienced shinobi at this news. Teams that previously were assigned these missions will be on security inside the village. Again a groan could be heard. Naruto couldn't help but chuckle at the groans of disappointment, knowing that he would have reacted the same way not too long ago. That's your mission once Gaara arrives in the city. Until then you will be on leave. So have the time off to train or just relax, whatever, he informed the group. Tsunade began passing out files with the missions each team would be partaking in, with the team leaving after collecting their files. Once the room emptied, the 4 remaining members all visibly relaxed. Well, that could have gone better, Karen said lazily. While I do agree, I never really expected any of them to react positively about news that we will be hosting a member of the royal family. In all honesty, it's possible that they could have revolted, Tsunade replied. You give my men too little credit, Tsunade, Shugo scoffed. They may have left the Empire with me to side with Naruto, but that does not mean they are not trustworthy. I'll try to remember that, Tsunade offered offhandedly. Still, I think we need to be on the lookout for anything out of the ordinary. Naruto might be willing to give this lady a chance, but I don't think she's trustworthy. Even if we can take her at her word that she means Naruto no harm, she is still the person responsible for the ambush at those trials. Karen suggested. That's true, but we don't know the reason why. Naruto replied. I'd like to be able to tell you she's just misunderstood, but nothing I have seen in all my time spent at her side makes me think that way. She is a cruel, vindictive woman, who would sooner cut your throat than hug you if she doesn't see any worth in it for herself. Shugo supplied with a frown. Naruto sighed and cast a upwards glance at the ceiling, silently thinking back to all those opponents he had faced in the past, and the reasoning behind why they did what they did. Whether it be Zabuza, who was fighting to bring peace back to his home and overthrow the then manipulated Mizukage, or Orochimaru, who was scared of his own mortality to the point where he would steal other people's bodies. Pain, or rather Nagato, who so desperately wanted peace he was willing to destroy everything to get it. Even Obito and Madara had their own misguided reasons why they turned out the way they did. I know you're probably right, but I want to know for myself. Talk and find out if there really is no hope for her. It's foolish, but if it can buy us even a few more days of peace, then I guess it can't be helped. I think you will be disappointed though, the Uchiha sighed in a melancholic drawl, shaking his head as he left the briefing room. Well, I guess that means the briefing is over then? Naruto asked hopefully. Yes, you can go. I'm not sure what you're in such a hurry for. You already have clones out training, and at the rate you're going you will have learned everything your parents and Jiraiya left for you in no time, Tsunade answered while standing from her seat at the table. With a cheer, the blonde took off to go join his clones for their daily training. He would often divide his time now between physical training and studying his parents' Fuinjutsu notes. He so far loved the idea of becoming a seal master much like his parents, and so many Uzumaki before him, but to his disappointment, he had made little progress with much more than the bare basics and improving his handwriting to an acceptable level. Considering it had only been a few days, that would normally be great progress for most, but for Naruto it was almost painfully slow. His problem, as it had so often been in the past, was the sheer amount of academic learning he had to do. Even with several clones reading and rereading the same book, it was so going. It was why the art was so rare amongst shinobi. The levels of study required were mind-blowing. Regardless of this fact, Naruto was never one to give up simply because something was difficult. No, it just meant that he became all the more eager to get it right. Meanwhile, Gaara was waiting quite patiently in her office, a few scrolls stacked beside her. She knew it would only take a little over a day to travel to the southern capital, but she also knew that meant they would either need to camp out at least once, something she had not done since she had been active in the military lower ranks, or stay in one of the villages that could potentially already be outside of her control. The last few months had seen quite the influx of the worse-off civilians heading south. She also knew that soon the other ruling Uchiha would see their own people seek refuge and a new life with the blonde. She lightly strummed the table with her fingers, the dull sounds still echoing in the empty yet large room she called an office. Finally, without warning, the door opened, and in walked two of her new servants. She hadn't deemed learning their names, as they were from more well-off civilian families that she considered to be well beneath her. I take it you have good news? She asked. A slight wilt in her voice promised pain if she did not get the response she desired. The two servants nodded and bowed deeply, avoiding looking the princess in the eyes. Yes, Haim-sama, a carriage has been prepared for your trip. No expense was spared, ensuring you will be in the utmost comfort while you travel. They both chorused together. Kami, they're like trained monkeys. I wonder if they are even capable of thinking for themselves. But still, even a monkey can have uses, Gaara thought with a smirk. Then what are you waiting for? Go fetch Tetsu and get out of my sight. Now! She ordered threateningly. Both servants almost fell over, they were in such a hurry to do as they were ordered, lest feel the wrath of the white-haired Uchiha, almost racing to the door. Rising to her feet, she grabbed several of the scrolls that sat on her desk and exited the room, heading downstairs and finally outside, where a large luxurious cart was parked, being pulled by two massive black horses draped in the crest of the Uchiha clan. Well, I suppose it will do for a few days, she thought while inspecting the caravan that for most people would have been considered a small luxury apartment. Entering the carriage, she wasted little time in making herself comfortable. Pouring a glass of red wine, she sat and waited. I wonder how the others will look when Naruto-kun ends their pitiful existence, a wistful thought that soon turned into a nice daydream, until it was abruptly ended. That is, I've arrived, Haim-sama, Tetsu spoke, snapping the princess back to reality. Good, then we shouldn't waste any more time. We wouldn't want to disappoint Naruto-kun and show up late, would we? She asked with a sweet, almost too innocent voice that screamed danger to the officer. Not at all, Haim-sama, we will leave immediately. Tetsu answered quickly with a bow. It was then he realized that it would be his job to drive the caravan, and let out a barely audible sigh as he hopped up and took the reins. As the pair left, there was no fanfare, nobody wishing them a safe journey. Only a few of the servants that were in the area would bow as the cart passed. All in all, it was a quiet exit for the princess and her guard. Meanwhile, far away, another meeting was being held. 10 figures sat around a large circular desk that had a large map of the empire that was divided into 12 sections and laid into it. At the edge of each section was the kanji for a number from 1 to 12, where a seat was placed reserved for the corresponding ruler. Well, it's a shock to see almost everyone here. The only ones absent are Gahara and Jolie, and the young brat couldn't even attend if she wanted to. A man sitting under the kanji for 3 laughed. I would have thought even if she were still alive she would have had the decency to not show her face. A smoothly feminine voice replied, her face hidden by the dark room, but they could make out her Sharingan blazing proudly as she spoke. To lose to a lowly peasant the way she did is laughable. The Uchiha at C3 spoke again with a more than jovial tone, like he was almost fighting to urge to actually break out in hysterics. Well, that can be debatable. We so far have no idea where this Konoha he mentioned is, and so far our records have shown up nothing. A new voice spat with a mixture of intrigue and frustration. You think it is actually a real place, Sasami? I think it would be an obvious lie to prevent an attack on his hometown, the woman queried, a little amused at the thought as her Sharingan readily observed the other who sat in the seat for 10. He had no need to lie. If you had studied the tapes as carefully as I, then you would have seen he was never in any real danger from Gahara or her daughter. He spoke with confidence and belief. Despite all your claims that he is a peasant and beneath us as Uchiha, he defeated several members of our clan with ease. The now named Sasami replied. He leaned forward to show a slightly older Uchiha, his hair now graying at the tips of a mop of shaggy black hair that looks as if it hadn't been cared for in years. He also had a short but shaggy beard that looked equally unkempt. Do you fear this boy, Sasami? Came a condescending voice from under the seat marked with a 1. The evidence is there. If you weigh the facts against your delusions, you would see he is not someone who you can defeat without significant planning and strategy, Sasami declared. Well, it's typical that you would say that. The only reason you are sitting at this desk is because of your underhanded tricks and traps. Why we consider that proper strength is beyond me. The woman with the active Sharingan spoke with a joking lilt. A real strategist can win a fight without even lifting a finger. In a head-on fight you may be correct that I am not as strong as some of the members of this table. But I don't need to be if I am smarter, the aged Uchiha responded with a confident smirk. Yes, that's all well and good, but it still doesn't answer the question of where this Naruto came from. The man at seat 3 said lazily. Well, just because we have no record of this Konoha in our database, it doesn't mean that none exists. The restricted files in the palace may have the information that we need. Perhaps the Shodai made some reference to other nations not under his control, Sasami reasoned. You think Aji-sama will let you look at them? I thought they were secrets for the emperor, and his firstborn only. The Uchiha at seat 3 asked, for the first time sounding somewhat serious. Sasami sighed and relaxed back into his seat as if pouting, his face once again shrouded in darkness. Pausing for a moment before he spoke, maybe not. But even if I ask him about this Konoha, his response might tell me something. Perhaps he knows something that we do not. Otherwise we're going to be left in the dark with no idea what we are up against. At this moment it's all hearsay. Gahara has been tasked with the destruction of this new so-called free nation to the south, and she is nothing if not resourceful. Came a rather uncertain voice sitting next to the empty 12th seat that would have been occupied by the albino princess should she have attended. That's true, no need to think about how to deal with a rebellion when we can let Gahara do it for us. Seems like she does have some uses after all, the woman with the active Sharingan spoke with some finality. Oh please, she is more likely to join him than defeat him, Sasami scoffed. You have such little faith in our dear cousin, the third seat laughed again. I mean either way she will be as good as dead. If she should squash the rebellion, then it's doubtful that Aji-sama will allow her to go unpunished for allowing it to occur in the first place. As far as I can see, her time among our number is over. The real question is who among our ranks of subordinates is fit to join us. Now is not the time for our officers to start killing each other to try and claim more power. Perhaps when this rebellion is fully squashed into the ground we can think about that. Sasami replied fervently. As much as it pains me to admit it, I agree with Sasami. No point in weakening ourselves before everything resolves itself. The man from seat 1 spoke with some authority. That seemed to end the discussion before it could even begin. The real reason we are here was to discuss who amongst us will be tasked with dealing with the rebellion should Gahara fail. The answer should be fairly clear. The neighboring regions Itami and Kazuka, they are already located on their doorstep and I'm sure are already prepared for war, the man in seat 3 replied lazily. But our regions do not have the strongest military. In fact, if you look at the statistics, not one member to ever sit at this table has come from the officers in our regions, a young man said apprehensively. That just makes them more expendable, the third seat joked again. Typical, we get thrown to the wolves. But just think of it as a learning experience, boy, came a grizzled response from a man sitting at the other side of Gahara's empty seat. I guess it can't be helped, you're right, sensei. But if, and when I get the chance, I'll make the rest of you pay for this, the younger Uchiha answered, his hesitant tone becoming a little more firm and confident. Yes, we're all terrified of you, Itami-chan, the third seat laughed dismissively. If that's settled, then I have work to do, Sasami stated before rising to his feet and out of the room. One by one the other followed suit, leaving the room empty. That night, Naruto was exhausted. Not in a physical sense, but mentally he was drained. As each of the clones reading the books on sealing dispelled, he felt the influx of memories as well as the realization that learning Fuinjutsu was going to take a long time, even with his clone training. The physical part of being a shinobi had always come to him relatively easily. In fact, the only major difficulties he faced were when he was younger, learning to climb trees, something that he was still able to do at the same rate as Sasuke, a boy considered a prodigy at the time. Even walking on water was easy for him to master once Jiraiya had removed the seal placed on him by Orochimaru. Is something wrong, Naruto-kun? Karen asked, entering the large study where they had been reading over his parents' scrolls on various topics from taijutsu, genjutsu to just philosophy and politics. He was happy to learn that he was not the only one that was no good at genjutsu. His mother was just as incapable as he was, and it had never really been that high on the list of priorities for his father either. Still, there were a few notes on ninjutsu here and there. Nothing, just lamenting how dumb I am when it comes to reading and learning, he bemoaned, causing the redhead to giggle. Now I am sure it's not that bad, Naruto-kun. Sealing takes years of work to even become adequate. It's not like learning to throw a punch, she scolded him before taking a seat beside him. It's not just that. All the other stuff I need to learn just to understand the basics, it's so much. I don't know if I am cut out of it. I feel like I'm insane to even try, the blonde admitted, rubbing his hair in frustration. Karen faked shock at those words. Don't tell me the great Naruto Uzumaki is giving up, she teased. This was, however, the right thing to say to remotivate the blonde. Naruto Uzumaki never gives up, and he never breaks a promise if he can help it. Just you watch, Karen-chan, I'll be a better seal master than Tu-san, Ka-chan and Ero-senin combined, he declared playfully. I'll believe it when I see it, Gaki. Came a call from the next room where Tsunade was studying some of Minato's ideas for healing seals he had based off of her own creation, rebirth jutsu. None of them were perfect, he lacked her expertise in the medical field. But there was enough there that she could work with. Minato's goal was simple enough: first aid seals to prevent death and return wounded soldiers to the field quickly. Sadly, they never got past the theoretical stage. You wanna bet, you old bat? Naruto yelled. I would. But you broke the only thing you owned that had any value, the Godame Hokage yelled back with mock anger. It's not my fault your grandfather's necklace broke, it was Kurama. Don't bring me into this. I wanted to be free at the time. That, and I hated you, the fox answered. You still tried to break free. Still, at least we're best buddies now, right? Silence was all that met the blonde's question, right? Again, no response. Oh, screw you. I like you, Naruto-sama, Shikaku spoke in his mind. Thank you, Shikaku, Kiss, as the fox said with a smirk. With that, the two Bijou began an internal argument that Naruto had to block out by closing their link. How about this? If I can learn advanced sealing in 1 year, I'll pay off all the gambling debts you owe. And don't tell me you don't have any. It's a large city, but word gets around. Tsunade would be lying if she said she wasn't interested. And what do you want if you win? She asked. A bad gambler she may be, but Tsunade was not foolish enough to enter a bet without knowing what she stood to lose. Naruto hadn't really thought about that. In his last bet with the Slug Princess, he won her necklace, and she agreed to become Hokage. But now he had no idea. You have to completely stop gambling your belongings, money, anything. No more poker nights, no more casinos, nothing. Karen answered with some finality. Both blondes seemed shocked by this. It's not like she couldn't stop gambling. She didn't place a single bet while she was Hokage. It would have been poor public relations if the potential clients found out she often owed thousands of ryo to people you wouldn't want to owe a single one. That's not a bad idea, Karen-chan. No more gambling if I win. What do you say, Ba-chan? Tsunade knew it was a bet she would probably lose. She learned a long time ago, never bet against Naruto Uzumaki. but for once it was a bet she didn't mind if she won or lost. Fine, you got yourself a bet. I'll be sure to not lose too much in the meantime. I wouldn't want to bankrupt our rebellion. As slowly as things had been going with Fuinjutsu, the same could not be said for the various ninjutsu his parents and Jiraiya had left. He'd always had a knack for ninjutsu, and with Fukusaku's help he had already been able to pick up several of the jutsu they had left for him. Right-un was still his weakest area, but the pointers Kakashi had given him had really helped, and he was now able to use some basic right-un jutsu with ease. Still, win the bet or not, I think you should relax a little more often, Gaki. Life isn't just training and fighting. I'm sure you agree, Karen, the busted blonde said casually. Well, she was a little torn on this issue, because if she was being honest she would want to spend every day with just her and Naruto. She even in her more wistful moments wished they were back on the mountains. But then she would remember how cold it was and her tune would soon change. I know, but as I am right now, I'm not strong enough to protect everyone. We're outnumbered by Kami knows how many, and I just don't want anyone you to be harmed, the Jinchuriki admitted a little sadly. We're not defenseless civilians, Gaki. I wasn't the Hokage for nothing. And even Karen has been improving extremely quickly lately. She might not yet be Jounin standard, but it won't be long. Tsunade lectured. I know, but it's not just you, is it? It's my students, the people that fled here from the Empire. Everyone. They're looking to me to keep them safe, and I don't know if I can. What if I'm not strong enough to save everyone? The younger blonde sighed. Naruto, nobody is that strong. People are going to suffer, that is just the way of life. Karen said soothingly. I know. But so long as I can do something I want to be able to save as many as possible, the Jinchuriki declared proudly. I guess that there is no talking you out of it, so I may as well just support your decision, and help out where I can, Tsunade sighed. Tsunade knew he wanted the impossible. They were heading towards an all-out war with the Empire, and they only had a handful of capable fighters. That would mean the brunt of the fighting would be done by Naruto himself. Something like that can change a person, she had seen it before. Orochimaru was the closest example, but his change came mostly because of the death of his parents. Still, she had seen it in many of the world's most famous ninja. You didn't get that well known without leaving bodies in your wake. Minato had been a talented yet kind-hearted jounin before the Third Ninja War, where he became the Kiroi Senko and would end a life faster than you could blink your eye. Kakashi had gone from by-the-books prodigy to an aloof, lazy, open pervert. Naruto had already changed slightly. Tsunade knew that when she heard the recount of his time at the placement exams. He had killed strategically, and efficiently, something she would not have thought possible from the goofy blonde she considered a little brother just a few years ago when he came back to the village with Jiraiya. What had pleased her though was his ability to still be himself around those he cared about. But unless he took time to do just that, and be himself, then the goofy innocent blonde would soon fall apart. That's it, tomorrow none of us are training, she said, suddenly rolling up the scroll she had been reading and placing it beside a small pile she had collected for herself. Naruto seemed stunned by this. What? Boo, no buts, we're all going to relax tomorrow, which means no making clones, no studying Fuinjutsu theory books, nothing ninja related. If you so much as tree climb, I'm kicking you out of the capital, the slug princess warned. Karen beamed at the prospect. I think that is a good idea, Naruto-kun. Besides, we will be expecting that Uchiha princess the following day, so it wouldn't be a good idea to be exhausted from training. Let's just go out and enjoy ourselves. Naruto had to admit she had a point. A day off couldn't hurt, I suppose. He thought almost questioningly. I agree with them, you have been working too hard. Relax for a while, it may even help you process some of the information you have been forcing into that thick head of yours, Kurama suggested. Even the fox had been thinking for a while that Naruto was working himself too hard and needed to slow down. He was still a teenager, and had years to learn, train, and improve himself. Alright, Naruto agreed. Even Kurama thinks you're right, so I guess I can take a break for a day or two. Chapter 53, Tense Arrivals. You need to focus, Naruto-chan. Fukusaku spoke up from his position atop a large stone rock. The same stone rock that several clones of the blonde were currently trying to turn to rubble with Doton manipulation. I am focusing, another Naruto called out from a few feet away, this one the original. Naruto was running through several hand seals in an attempt to master a Suiton jutsu, and failing miserably. The jutsu shouldn't be this difficult for you, Naruto-chan. You did finish the second stage of Suiton manipulation, did you not? Fukusaku replied. The small toad leapt from the boulder, crossing the field in a single bound before landing atop the blonde summoner's shoulders. Naruto sighed, racing through the required hand seals again before spitting out a small ball of water that splashed harmlessly against a large tree. Yeah, I did. But this is my first real jutsu I have attempted that isn't Futon. Maybe I should try a different jutsu. One that doesn't require using water from my own body. I'll just end up dehydrating myself. No giving up, Fukusaku answered quickly, waving his cane threateningly above the blonde's head. You wanted to learn more toad-style jutsu, didn't ya? And the toad's Suiton techniques are second to none. Admittedly, Naruto had indeed asked to learn more toad-style ninjutsu, but he already had a rather impressive arsenal of wind-based techniques, and now Suiton was the next element that he had completed the basic training to use. But he had not anticipated Fukusaku to start teaching him such a high-ranking offensive technique right off the bat. In the past he had seen Suiton used more defensively, used to block other techniques or trap opponents rather than in an offensive manner. This actually appealed to the Jinchuriki, as his primary futon affinity was somewhat lacking in that department. I didn't want to give up, just thought it might be easier if I have more water around. Even using my body's water I still have to create it, the blonde explained, if a little frustrated by yet another failure. If you can complete this jutsu, tien any of the Suiton jutsu you have in your parents' scrolls should be easy, Fukusaku lectured. It was sound reasoning, like how mastering the Rasengan improved his shape manipulation needed to master other jutsu. Granted, he had needed a clone to assist him for a long time, but he could now easily produce his father's jutsu with ease. Still, wouldn't it be more practical to learn an easier jutsu that I could use in a fight now rather than one I need to perfect over time once my manipulation of water gets better? Ya Ave clones working on adding Suiton to your Rasengan Dancha? The small toad asked, already knowing the answer. Naruto nodded in response. Well, yeah. Then you will have a Suiton jutsu you can use. Now get back to work and focus this time. It had been early morning when Naruto had made his way to his private training field. He had intended for a short training session with his sensei. But as usual they had lost track of time, and now the sun was high. It must have been closing in on noon. So it was of little surprise when Karen arrived at the edge of the clearing to grab him for lunch. What was a surprise, however, was her choice of clothing. Karen landed in a luxurious blood-red kimono with a gold leaf pattern a few shades darker than her hair, that was most unusually tied up in an intricate bun, with just a few strands left to frame her face. Instantly upon her arrival, Naruto made a mistake in his jutsu, and rather than a ball of compressed water, the water for the jutsu trickled out of his mouth as if he was drinking and forgot how to swallow. Wow, Karen-chan, amazing! He gushed once he got over his initial shock. Karen, for her part, almost broke out into a fit of laughter. Unfortunately, I cannot say the same for you, Naruto-kun, she giggled, looking at his disheveled and now wet training gear. The blonde looked down and saw what she was talking about and gave an embarrassed laugh, rubbing the back of his neck while thinking of some sort of excuse. I guess I was just training too hard and didn't notice. I'm sure, she replied with a deadpan before her features hardened. Did I do something wrong, Karen-chan? I didn't miss a date or anything, did I? Because I promise I'll make it up to you, he said, a slight hint of worry in his voice at the somewhat angered features on the redhead. You were supposed to be back in the village almost 2 hours ago, she answered harshly. That Uchiha lady is almost at the village, and you are looking like you live on the streets. Or at least sleep in them. Naruto paled. He had forgotten all about the fact that Gahara would be arriving for their parley today. Oh Kami, Fukusaku-sensei, I need to go. He spoke with renewed urgency. No worries, my boy. We will continue work on your elemental manipulation next time. The small-aged toad replied before disappearing in a puff of smoke. Sorry, Karen-chan, I forgot. Let's head back home so I can get ready. He half begged. In almost an instant he was gone, stopping for only a second to give Karen a quick kiss before taking off in a blur. You better hurry. If you're not ready in time, Tsunade will send you out on patrols for the next month. We shouldn't both be punished just because you can't keep track of the time. Karen called after him. Despite being a fair way away, Naruto still heard her. She never gets sent out of the village anyway. Bachan never punishes Karen-chan. I don't know what she's complaining about, he chuckled. I believe she considers you being away from her as punishment, came the voice of Shikaku in his head. Yes, Naruto has found a loyal and devoted mate. Despite my initial misgivings, I can actually say that I approve of the vixen. But I do hope his kits do not cause us as much of a headache as Tusama's. Although being full-blooded Uzumaki kits, I don't doubt they will, Kurama added. Can we not talk about that stuff, please? Karen-chan isn't pregnant. We haven't even talked about children, Naruto said loudly, a little embarrassed at the thought. That isn't to say he disliked the idea. He always wanted a family growing up, so starting his own wasn't the worst idea as far as he was concerned. With that said, he didn't want to be raising his children while being hunted by the Uchiha clan. That is true. But with how much Naruto didn't need to hear the end of that sentence, and abruptly shut the link down to save his own embarrassment. I don't need to hear that, right now, he said, blushing at what the bijou had implied. The blonde decided it was best to stay clear of Tsunade until he was dressed and ready to meet with Gahara, so he entered his room via a large window and quickly made his way to the bathroom for a shower. Upon exiting the shower, he found a change of clothes laid out for him. A formal kimono with the same leaf design except in orange that adorned Karen's own outfit lay on the bed. The major difference, save being designed for a man, was that instead of a dark red the kimono was black. Would it have been too much to ask to get the colors reversed? He thought while pulling on the dress robes. Probably. I doubt the Senju woman would accept your normal choice of attire for such an event, Kurama answered. Yeah, I get it. Nobody likes orange. I still don't see why. I mean, orange is awesome, the blonde replied in thought. He had just finished getting dressed when a loud knocking shook the door. Gaki, it's time. Get your ass out here. The voice of the slug Sannin permeated the room. I'm coming, you old bat. No need to break the door down, he called back, opening the door out into the large hallway. Tsunade herself wore a similarly designed robe, only in green with a sky blue leaf pattern. Well, look at you. Seems even you can look presentable if you try, she said with a smirk, musing his spiky hair earning a pout from the younger blonde. Quite handsome indeed, she added, quickly fixing his collar. Naruto huffed, and quickly ran his hands through his hair in the off chance that his perpetually unruly hair was somehow affected. So any reason we're all looking like color-coded copies? Just a uniform. It's best if we seem professional. In my experience, meetings always go better if you dress the part, Tsunade explained, leading the way down the stairs to the foyer where Karen was waiting with Shugo, whose kimono was royal blue with a red design. Scouts reported in just a few moments ago, Shugo said with a practiced bow, the years of servitude under Gahara and other members of his family assuring that he was highly formal. They will be at the gates in around 30 minutes. In that case, I'll leisurely walk through the village then, Tsunade said with a smile. Sure, why not, Naruto readily. Like always when they were out in the city, they were greeted happily. In the past few months the lives of those that lived in the city had improved drastically, in part due to allowing any who wanted it free passage back to the empire, but also just by removing the gangs. He also had many of the potential shinobi students run what Konoha used to call D-ranked missions to improve parts of the city, as such large areas went from run-down and depressing to completely refurbished. Their timing was impeccable. As the gates opened allowing Naruto and the greeting party to arrive, the large wagon containing Gahara appeared at the far end of the large fields that surrounded the city. Well, she certainly didn't rough it on the way here, Tsunade mused while admiring the intricate caravan pulled by a couple of large horses. Wouldn't it have been faster to run? I mean, she is a shinobi after all, Naruto queried. It's not a question of speed. Gahara wouldn't lower herself to stay in any of the villages, or camp in the wilderness. That carriage is more like a small luxurious apartment. Shugo explained, a slight hint of disgust in his voice. Naruto easily recognized Tetsu driving the carriage, but the man seemed to completely ignore him, sending a deadly glare at the Uchiha trader before opening the door of the carriage. Gahara-heim, we have arrived, he spoke while taking a knee and bowing. Slowly Gahara exited the caravan. She wore a flowing white dress with red edges that showed a considerable amount of cleavage. At the center of her back, a Uchiha clan fan sat proudly inside a large red circle. This place has changed a bit since I was here last, she thought out loud until her eyes locked onto Naruto. Oh my Naruto-kun, look how handsome you are. I hardly recognized you out of the rags you wore when we first met, she practically gushed and shocked everyone there, enveloping the young blonde in a hug, placing his head in her cleavage. The others in the welcoming party were highly on edge, not just because of the Uchiha's overly warm greeting. Tsunade was on edge because she had heard of the albino woman's impressive control of wind and was ready to jump in should the need arise. Shugo was in a similar state. Karen, on the other hand, was ready to attack Gahara for her actions. Only Tsunade's warning hand on her shoulder stopped her. Naruto, who had the decency to blush at the predicament, rubbed the back of his head in embarrassment as he struggled to find the right words. Thanks, you're a lot prettier now, you're not trying to kill me, he chuckled, trying to return the compliment, which did not improve Karen's mood at all. Yes, such ugly business that was, she admitted casually. But we all must do our duty, that is why we are here, is it not? Naruto nodded in agreement. I suppose so, but really, other than being left alone, we don't want anything. Let's save the formal talks for later, Naruto-kun. For now, how about you show me around, and introduce me to your... Gahara then took in the other members of the welcoming party. Shugo she almost immediately dismissed. But the two women caused her pause. Tsunade was clearly a beautiful woman who looked to be around her own age, but the redhead was heading in the same direction. She still had a fair bit of growing to do, and once she had matured a little more, Gahara could see she would rival any woman for beauty. Associates, she decided. Oh yeah, this is Tsunade-ba-chan and Karen-chan. He beamed in response, ignoring the annoyed scowl on the Senju's face. You're his grandmother? Gahara asked, clearly stunned by the revelation. Impossible. This woman couldn't be older than 30. No, the Gaki is just disrespectful. I'll be sure to punish him later, Tsunade replied, offering a hand to the Uchiha princess. Gahara raised an eyebrow, intrigued by her meaning. You seem confident in your abilities. Naruto-kun is from my experience a highly formidable opponent. Pfft, Tsunade scoffed. I could beat the little shit with a single finger. She knew that was not true, at least not anymore. This was a calculated move to sow misinformation at their total strength. While Naruto is ultimately the figurehead of our fledgling nation, I am the one that is actually in charge. Is that so? The albino questioned, gazing at Naruto for confirmation. Well, I don't know about one finger. If you asked me, we're even. But yet Bachan knows way more than I do about how to run a village, so at least for now she's our real leader. The blonde admitted a little begrudgingly. Gahara still didn't know what to think. If what they were saying was true, then this woman was as strong as, if not stronger than, the blonde who had made sport of her and Jolie. I'll take that into consideration during negotiations then. I hope it would not be rude of me to ask for a demonstration at some point during my trip. If there is time, I don't see why not, Tsunade replied, a small smirk gracing her lips. Just according to plan. And this young lady is Karen? Yes, Gahara asked, her attention now directed towards the redhead. You were with Naruto-kun during the placement trials, were you not? Karen had suppressed her earlier rage and was able to maintain her calm. That's right, I was there. I didn't really appreciate the attempt on our lives though. For her part, Gahara laughed. No, I can't imagine you would. But whilst it wasn't considered a normal route that I took, it would have been considered kind in comparison to the alternative. Karen was less than convinced, however, that being? She asked skeptically. Well, Naruto-kun clearly caused a stir in this very city not all that long before the trials. Our family's policy on those who can wield chakra not under the Empire's control is to scorch the earth they walk on and leave no trace. So far more people would have died if that were the case. Naruto had overheard this and decided to butt in. Well, in my defense, I was only defending myself and Karen-chan. As for the soldiers I had to kill, his expression hardened. While not wanting to come off as aggressive, he needed to make sure the warning was heard. I'll stop anyone who tries to harm my precious people. Precious people, huh? Gahara repeated absent-mindedly. Tell me, Naruto-kun, how does one become precious to you? The flirting overtones were not missed by Karen, but they certainly were by the blonde. Well, Naruto had to pause. This was not an easy question to answer. Most of the people in his life that he considered precious didn't really do anything in particular to earn such a position. It's kind of hard to explain. They're just those that I couldn't bear to see anything bad happen to. That is probably a foreign concept to most members of our family, Naruto. Shugo interrupted before Gahara could reply. I can understand the concept. Don't consider me a fool, Shugo. Gahara snapped angrily at her fellow Uchiha. Then do you have someone you would do anything to protect? Naruto asked, suddenly thinking that he was sounding a lot like the person who had asked him that same question all those years ago. I'm afraid at the moment I do not, Naruto-kun. Perhaps I will find someone one day, she admitted while carefully studying the blonde. It was a foreign concept for the blonde. Here was a lady who had a massive family, yet she saw none of them as precious to her. That must make you quite lonely. I have never really thought about it. Gahara admitted, seemingly in deep thought. Regardless, shall we move this conversation to another area? I see no need to keep talking out here in the open, Tsunade spoke up. Yes, let's go. I would also like to see what changes you have made to this city, Gahara agreed. As the gate opened, Gahara spied several former members of the Empire who had defected with Shugo. As they walked through the streets, she also noticed they were being followed by 4 others that she had not seen before. I must ask, Naruto-kun, are you training the civilians here to use chakra? Well, the academy is mostly being taken care of by Karen-chan. I just run some training for the more advanced students, Naruto replied. He was quite proud of the new budding shinobi. For students of less than a year, the 4 that are following us are quite impressive, though they could hide their chakra a little better. The Uchiha lectured. She felt no guilt in offering some advice. In her opinion, a bunch of civilians could never amount to all that much in comparison to the chosen clans of the Empire. They wouldn't ever amount to much, so a few pointers could do no harm. Yeah, I was never all that great at that. My master taught me some techniques, but they're a little too advanced for fresh graduates. Naruto admitted. His more advanced chakra control had come from his training with the toads in the art of senjutsu, not something that could be taught to a fresh academy graduate. They simply require better chakra control. I'll make sure they receive more training on the topic. Tsunade spoke up, actually in agreement with Gahara's assessment of the early graduates. Well, they did ask for help with learning some medical ninjutsu, so you need to have good chakra control for that. I bet they will be able to hide their chakra from anyone in no time at all, the blonde Uzumaki added proudly. You know Iryo ninjutsu? Gahara seemed almost impressed. Is that how you are able to recover from injury so quickly? She pressed, eager to know if Naruto's almost instant regeneration was something that could be learned. Naruto shook his head, almost laughing at the thought of him having enough chakra control to compare to Tsunade's mitotic regeneration. Me? Nah, I'm terrible at that stuff. My advanced healing is more along the lines of something I was born with, even if I wouldn't call it a Kiki-Igenkai. As they walked, the streets seemed to clear, at least at first. The sight of a member of the royal family had spooked the civilian population, but as time went on, a few of the more brave citizens had begun following, almost gawking at the rather civil conversation going on between two supposed enemies. The path towards the central mansion wove through areas of the city that had been greatly restored since Naruto's coup. They were eager to show off what they had accomplished in such a short period of time. While Gohara was unable to compare, as she so rarely would set foot anywhere near the city. Tetsu had been in the city when Naruto had first shown up, and the differences were night and day. The streets, while once dirty and lined with broken windows and rubbish, were now clean. Trees and flowers had been planted to brighten the mood. The storefronts had been repaired and were far more welcoming, none more so than a bar on Tien, the corner of one of the main access streets. This had been a hotbed of crime controlled by one of the larger city gangs that had been kicked out, along with those that wished to return to the empire. The windows that had once been boarded up now were open, the bar filled with happy cheers and singing. Gahara was stunned. She had never seen people act in such a way. Where was their discipline? She had never been allowed to experience such a thing. They seem happy, she mused. Yes, this place certainly has changed since I was here last, Tetsu admitted stiffly. Well, it's amazing what can happen when you treat people with some respect, Shugo answered with a smirk, knowing it would get under his old master's skin. Respected earned, not given freely, Gahara replied as calmly as she could, although in truth she was still engrossed by the sight of the friendly, happy scene of the bar, civilians singing songs, playing music. Even in the capital, most of the establishments she had seen or been to were far more serious. Respect in the empire is wealth or family. The system is broken, so the so-called earning of respect is impossible without breaking the law and treating others with contempt and indifference. You're looking at the results of freedom after 100 years of oppression. Shugo spoke, knowing where Gahara's eyes were lingering. The albino princess's eyebrow twitched in annoyance. She didn't like being lectured, and certainly not by her former guard. Even if I did agree, it is personal strength that matters most to the empire. Ruthless aggression is encouraged. That is why I am a leader, and you are nothing but a servant, even in your new role. I'd rather be a servant with freedom than a slave to our family's twisted rules. Shugo smirked, happy to see that he touched a nerve. He knew Gahara had been fighting against their family's traditions and her perceived weakness since she had been born, and despite all of her talent and unique skills, she was still under the Emperor's thumb. That's enough. Gahara is here as our guest, Tsunade said with authority, although she allowed a small smile to cross her features. Perhaps we can take a closer look at some of the nightlife in the village later, she suggested. Naruto was tempted to point out that Tsunade just wanted an excuse to get drunk, but considering the circumstances decided against it. Gahara smiled and gave a curt nod in response. Yes, I would like that. I think there's no need to make these meetings entirely formal. They continued to move through the village, every so often stopping for Naruto or Tsunade to point out some changes they had made to the working of the city that either made it more safe or efficient. The only areas they avoided were areas that could be seen as targets should the Empire attack. The hospital, for one. Being a new village, they didn't really have any Umbu or Tandi departments, but there was a makeshift prison for those that broke the law. However, often they would be given a choice to simply return to the Empire or the time in holding. Eventually, though, they arrived at a large central mansion. The gates swung open and they were met with currently horse-sized form of Shikaku. Welcome back, Naruto-sama, the tanuki spoke while wagging its sandy tail. Gahara of course recognized the creature but remembered it being several times its current size. He can control that giant beast that appeared at the trials. He was also able to summon that giant golden fox as well. I wonder if it is around here too? Tetsu, on the other hand, was a little more startled, leaning into Shugo in surprise. What is that thing? That's Shikaku, the sand spirit. I don't really know that much about it, but apparently there are 8 more somewhere. It doesn't really like me much though, Shugo answered honestly. He himself didn't know why, but the sand creature was always very wary around Shugo, and he had yet to see the reemergence of the fox Kurama. My, what a fascinating creature! Gahara mused once she moved past her initial shock. Another one of your summons, Naruto-kun? she queried. Naruto rubbed the back of his head, not really sure how to answer that question. Not really, although I could probably summon Shikaku if I wanted, he's more like a friend. Gaara began circling Shikaku, examining the bijou closely but never reaching out to touch the sand-based tanuki. Well, summons or not, a creature like this one is certainly interesting. It seemed untamed and wild during the trials though. Or was that all planned? No, not planned. He just sort of showed up there because that's where I was when he reformed. He was a little disorientated at the time. The blonde Uzumaki answered. Unparalleled strength, powerful summons, and now these chakra-based creatures that show him loyalty. What an impressive young man you are, Naruto-kun. The princess thought with a sly smile. Amazing, then the giant fox that you summoned to combat this Shikaku is a similar creature, I take it. Naruto hesitated. He didn't really want to bring the bijou up. They all had a rather rough past when it came to members of the Uchiha clan. Yeah, his name is Kurama. Gaara nodded and once more turned back to study the bijou. I see. And do you enjoy working with Naruto-kun, Shikaku? Naruto-sama is a friend to all of the nine and father's successor. It is my pleasure to help him in any way that I can. The tanuki answered flatly, not really interested in talking to the Uchiha. 9. Does that mean there are 9 of these creatures that Naruto can summon? With power like that, even the combined might of the Empire would struggle to deal with him. Oh, this will be perfect. First I make Naruto-kun mine, then I'll place myself as the Empress with a loyal group of 9 guard dogs to do our bidding. Gaara licked her lips at the very thought. Shikaku, has anyone approached the city walls since we have been gone? Tsunade asked hesitantly. She was still unsure of Naruto's willingness to let the bijou roam the city freely, but his abilities were more than useful. No, Tsunade-dano, the only people to approach the city all day have been the Uchiha and her partner. Shikaku replied. Good, I am glad you kept your word and didn't try to sneak anyone into the city. It would not have ended well for them. The Busta Senju smirked, thanking the bijou before walking on. Allow me to show you to your rooms for the duration of your stay. They may not be as luxurious as you are accustomed, but they are the best we can offer. While Tsunade and Shugo left with the 2 from the Empire, Naruto and Karen remained behind with Shikaku. What do you think? The blonde asked as he watched the other leave. Her chakra is dark, but not twisted in the way that Sasuke's was before the war. But I do think she is planning something, Karen replied honestly. Naruto nodded. He was thinking the same thing. And Tetsu? Similar to what I sensed while he was in the village. He's not a bad person, Karen answered. True, he simply places his duty to the Empire above all else. He's not all that different from Kakashi-sensei. The real question will be what would happen if there is a choice between a comrade and a mission, Naruto reasoned. Right, those who abandon their friends are worse than trash, just like you tell all the students. Karen giggled before her features hardened. I don't think these meetings will go all that well. We will end up in a war with the Empire. I know, but just because we will be enemies, doesn't mean we can't be friends for now, the blonde answered, knowing it would be difficult to get out of any confrontation with the Empire. We just need to be ready when the time comes.